All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you for being here and welcome you to this meeting of the Coeur d'Alene School District Board for April 1st, 2019. Would the gentlemen please remove their hats and everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a mic.
Okay. Again, thank you for being here tonight. My name's Casey Morrisroe, and I'm our board chair. Before we get going, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our participants here. I'm going to start with Ms. Town, who's standing for us for introductions. She's the clerk of the board. To my immediate right is Dr. Steve Cook, our superintendent. To my left is Lisa May, our vice chair. And then Tamber Pickford, trustee, Tom Hearn, trustee, and Jennifer Brumley, trustee. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of this meeting. Please sign on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Please note, because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board through the clerk in writing. Thank you. Okay. So board, we've made an amendment on the posted agenda after it was first posted. That's item M on the consent agenda. So is there a motion to amend the agenda as presented tonight, adding item M?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So is there now a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Ms. Town, did we handle that right? Okay, thank you. Are we going in this order on recognition?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to go to our board recognition here. And first up, I'm going to have Jim Windish come up. And he's going to talk about Invent Idaho and our Best of Show winners.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman Morrisroe, members of the board. I would like to present our district's Invent Idaho competition winners. The Invent Idaho competition has been held for many years in our school district with competitions at all of our elementary schools and then a district competition that happens in January. And the winners will be honoring tonight were those that won Best of Category awards at that, the highest award we offer. So, all right, so some of them are in attendance, and if you are in attendance, please come up in front of the board to receive recognition from them. Okay, so our first category winner is Ian Hampton of Hayden Meadows Elementary School. He won the Working Model Best of Category for his invention Bandages for Boxes. So Ian, you can come up to be recognized. Okay. Our second inventor we're honoring tonight is Greta McDevitt from Sorensen Magnet School of the Arts and Humanities, and she won in the non-working category with an invention called the Dog Cookie Maker that uses scraps from the school cafeteria to make dog treats. Our next invention winner is Caleb Torgensen from Hayden Meadows Elementary School. His was in the adaptation category. It was called the organ printer, and it could be a promising medical invention. And our next inventor we have is Eric Pierce from Ramsey Magnet School of Science. His invention was in the Jules Verne category, which is for inventions that are beyond our technological abilities at this time, and his was the muon fusion rocket, which could be quite the power source if we ever figure that out. And then our final inventor we're honoring isn't able to be here tonight, but that is Lydia Kirkbride of Winton Elementary School, and she invented an educational game called the Math Path. So. And all of these inventors were able to go on to compete at a regional competition, and many went to the state competition too. We actually had 11 people earn awards at the state competition from the Coeur d'Alene District this year. I believe the most we ever have. So congratulations to all our inventors, and especially these 5 winners of our Best of category.
Just real quick, I'd like to thank Mr. Windich, who spearheads the competition for the district. I know he puts a lot of extra time and work into that. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all your time that you put into that. Okay, Dr. Cook, go ahead.
All right, good evening. I have to admit up front that we were a little bit dishonest about this next award. You'll see what I mean here in just a second. If I could get Teresa Moran to come up here, please. So Teresa is here tonight because she thinks that we're going to talk about Project Search, but we're not. So each month we celebrate a person or group or program. Don't be running away from me. A group, a program that performs exceptional work on behalf of our school district and our community. This month, the Board of Trustees and I are delighted to recognize the architect, leader, and champion of our outstanding Project Search program, Teresa Moran. Did you know?
No.
All right. Project Search is a transition program for high school graduates. It provides educational and training to these young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Look up here. We've got some photos for you. We'll be just watching those as I read this. The school district administers Project Search in a collaboration that also includes TESH Inc., Kootenai Health, and the Idaho Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. The goal is to secure competitive employment for each and every student enrolled in this one-year program. None of this would be happening without the vision and management of Teresa, a special education teacher in our school district. She helped start Project Search 9 years ago. Here's just some of what she's accomplished in that time. The program has helped over 35 interns learn the skills they need to be gainfully employed at least 16 hours per week and being paid minimum wage or higher. Teresa has helped Project Search students learn the skill set of job descriptions in over 20 hospital departments at Kootenai Health. She remains connected with her interns after they complete the program as a resource and for support. Teresa volunteers her time to promote Project Search at local job fairs and events supporting children and adults with disabilities. She also secured numerous Excel Foundation grants and other community grants to help support her dynamic programming. This includes a recent grant from Mountain West Bank that allowed the current year interns to attend a 2-day Tools for Life conference in Boise at the beginning of March. This was the first time most of these student interns went on a trip without family, and for one student, it was his first time on an airplane. Project Search is a vital asset to our community And Teresa is a passionate advocate for the program and her students. All right, so I want to show you this. We have a certificate for her. All right, I need about 2 more hands. But I'll get it. Teresa, for your continued impact on the post-secondary educational experience of student interns enrolled in Project Search program, and especially for your ongoing efforts, collaboration, and dedication to the success of this program with families, partner agencies, and Kootenai Health, the Board of Trustees are honored to present you with this Leadership Award. Hold on, Scott. Hold on, Scott. Stay there. Stay close. All right. So I'm going to hand her the mic. And I'm going to give her a chance to say something. She had no idea. So this is like, and then I'm going to ask everybody that's connected to Project Search to come up. And I would love to get a group photo for all of this. And let's get something posted on the website. But before that, let's put her on the spot.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cook. Yeah, totally surprised. I was under the impression that we were actually recognizing Mountain West Bank today, and for their generous donation to our program for this year. But it's just been an absolute thrill. I've worked in special education now for over 20 years, and I've been here a part of the Coeur d'Alene School District for 9 years. This is the longest district I've worked for, and I plan on continuing as long as they'll keep on continuing me and my in the Project Search program. Absolutely thrilled. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, stand right here. We're going to put her right in the middle. Everybody come on up. Come on. We want a big group picture. All the people that are affiliated with this.
This would include parents, too.
Yes, parents too. Yeah, Amy Fine is the culprit, in case anybody's wondering.
So sweet.
All right, and now for Shining Star Awards.
Shining Star and Teacher of the Month, but I just want to thank you as well, Teresa, and everyone else. We look forward to we get an email every week and update on what you guys are doing and what you're learning along with the picture, and I know I can speak for everyone up here. We look forward to receiving those and reading how you guys are doing, so thank you for all that you do. And the Teacher of the Month for March, our partnerships with Kiwanis Panhandle and Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership help us recognize Teacher of the Month and Shining Star Awards in our district. And so for the month of March, Erin Short is the English teacher at Lake City High School. Our next Teacher of the Month is Beth Schaller. She teaches math at Camfield Middle School. And the next one is Liz Thurgood, is a music teacher at Skyway Elementary. This was fun. All her kids were actually singing, and she was directing them, and they were all looking at us, and they broke out into a happy birthday song for her. It was really sweet. It wasn't her birthday, but I think they were second graders, so that was a song they knew to celebrate their teacher, so we went along with it. And the next, let's see, Jill Getz, Employee of the Month. She's a behavior support assistant at Bora Elementary, our Shining Star, so please help me congratulate all of our Teacher of the Month.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pickford. Now we'll go to our high school student body reports, and I'm going to start with K-Tech tonight. Well, guys, we're going to have you go to the podium over here.
Oh, they're like,
Thank
yes.
you. And
So cute.
just hit the button there and make sure the red light's on, please.
That's fancy. All right.
We should just give it a
So-
mic and let them do it right there.
I'm Robert Torgerson. This is my friend Tate Messier from KTEC's construction program. Thank you so much for hearing us. So in the construction program, we've done quite a few projects over the past couple years, but you heard a speech last year, so I'll just sum up this year. We're building a tiny house for a CdA resident. We refurbished a greenhouse by New Vision. We just tore off some of the siding and we replaced the paper on top because it was all just going to crap. We built a we built a tiny playhouse, just a little like 4x4, basically just a playhouse for outside. It's really nice. Keeps your kids quiet while you can take a nap, and it's amazing. Not that I'd know, but we're also working on some tables for the North Lakes Fire District, made out of some 2x12s. And at the beginning of the year, we built a doghouse for the sheriff's department. And I don't mean a doghouse. It's yay big. It was about 16 feet long, 8 feet wide, and about 3/4 of it was just patio and a roof and a deck, and so the dog could actually hang out outside. Yeah. So that's the project that we've done this year. Some of the other things that we've done is competed for the Skills USA, or we did a district deal to send off contenders to go to Skills USA competition. And this year we're sending me and a couple people from the other class that couldn't quite be here. And yeah, that's pretty much what I've got to say.
He's selling himself short. He won first place in districts, so. So another thing that KTEC participates in is a project called 4-H, which is hard hats, hammers, or H4, hard hats, hammers, and hot dogs. That's my bad. But so essentially this year, we're having 500 students come to KTEC, and we're having 26 participating companies come and teach them or kind of show them what like blue collar jobs are all about. And so this will be our 11th one at KTEC, so that's something we're doing here soon. We've also got, for our construction program, we're doing the Construction Combine, which is something brand new for KTEC, and it's the first one ever in North Idaho, so we're really excited about that. And so the Construction Combine is sort of like a thing where a bunch of people, anyone from the community, can come out and essentially build whatever project they've decided on this year. I don't know what it is off the top of my head right now, but so essentially we'll have different companies come in and they'll watch you as you work, and they will, at the end of it, will even offer some people jobs. So it's just kind of something that they do. And then the last one that they did, they built sheds, and then at the end of it, they gave it away to veterans. So something else that we're thinking of doing this year. And then, so they want us to talk about something, why we like KTEC, and I'll just share my story of why I came to KTEC. But so I go to Lake City High School for my other school, because KTEC's a two-part thing. So, and freshman and sophomore year, I actually hated school. I did not want to come to school. I hated school to the point where I was going to drop out junior year, where I was not coming to school anymore. And a week before school started, my mom discovered KTEC. So we went and took a tour and all that, and I actually thought, hey, I'll give it a shot, why not? And so not even like a week in, I enjoyed it, and since I wanted to keep doing it, you can't have any passing, or you can't have any failing grades, and you can't do anything like that. My grades shot up. And so now I'm passing all my classes. I could have graduated actually early last year from Lake City, so yeah, that's just something that I really like and really enjoy from that. So I just want to thank you all for supporting KTEC. So that's all I got.
Hey guys, nice job. I do want to take just a second to give a shout out to this construction combine. This is the first time we're ever going to try this, and we've actually marketed this with all of the school districts in North Idaho, and I think they did a wonderful job of presenting this. But ultimately, the goal on this is for 2 days, April 11th and 12th, students that want to participate get to participate in front of construction managers and supervisors and construction superintendents. And if the superintendents like what they see at the end of this 2-day period, they actually draft our students and give them jobs and offer them jobs on site. And all the proceeds of this will go to a cause that is, do we know, Jeff, where we're going with this yet? Okay. So yeah, please help us get the word out. We'd love to have so many kids participating in this. It's a fantastic program, and we're very excited to do the first one ever in North Idaho. So April 11th and 12th coming up. The question was, do you have to be enrolled in the district to participate? And no, you do not. But we'd love for you to be a student because it's much easier for us to track if you were.
And while we're giving shout outs on this, first of all, gentlemen, nice job there. I like hearing your stories. That's the whole point of KTEC. So thank you for sharing that personal story with us. But I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Cook here. A week or two ago, he had mentioned that this is during the day. It's, I believe, next Thursday and Friday, not this week, but the following week. And for our students, it was going to be an absence. And he's worked with school administration. This actually will count as a school sanctioned activity. So students from our school district that attend will be counted as present, and it won't count against their absences. So super cool, because I think it's great exposure for students who might be in a similar situation to what we heard tonight, just to give them some inspiration and some value to their education. So thank you. Okay, next up, let's hear from Lake City High School.
Good evening, esteemed board chair, honorable trustees, Superintendent Cook, and district administration. My name is Claire Mitchell, and I'm the ASB treasurer at Lake City High School. Also with me tonight are ASB President Amani Pereira, ASB Vice President Emma Bull, and ASB Secretary Chloe Teets. Lake City hosted a couple large community events in late March that we wanted to update you on. Math is Cool was hosted on March 15th by our marvelous math teacher, Mrs. Grossman, and included over 400 4th and 5th graders, representing more than 100 elementary school teams from Spokane and North Idaho. There was so much energy and excitement in the building that night, and we'd like to recognize the efforts of Mrs. Grossman and our 2019 valedictorian, Tori Stevenson, in making the event such a success. Also, on March 18th, the first annual Now and Next Summit was hosted at LC by our incredible college and career advisor, Ms. Delgizi, and included almost 50 booths from college and career reps, and a dozen breakout sessions about dual credit, financial aid, and more. We had over 300 people attend the event, and we'd like to thank Ms. Delgizi and all of the community representatives who helped make the event successful. We also have a lot of events coming up in April. SAT Day is next week on April 9th, and it will be a juniors-only school day. Our college prep juniors will also be going on campus visits this month to Gonzaga, Whitworth, and Eastern Washington universities. We also have ASB elections coming up at the end of this month. Also in April, we have our annual Sunrise Sunset Mother-Son, Father-Daughter Dinner Dance. It will be next Monday, April 8th from 6 to 8 at the Coeur d'Alene Inn, and our seniors are looking forward to boogieing down with their parents. We also have our annual Mother-Daughter Tea on April 25th from 5 to 7, where our senior girls and their moms will be creating a painting with Paint Buzz again this year. And our 8th grade parent night is on April 17th from 5:30 to 7. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and we look forward to introducing you to the new ASB officers next month.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Will you be back next month to make those introductions? Yeah, okay. We'll wish you well then. Okay, in Coeur d'Alene High School.
Hello, my name is Parker Drexel. I'm from Coeur d'Alene High School. I'm a rep. This is my first time here too. What I'd like to talk about today is we'd like to invite you guys to our Viking Country barbecue and auction on April 6th at 5 p.m. at the Coeur d'Alene Inn. We have a silent auction and live auction. We have many items there. Some of them can range from a huge vacation, and some can go to a puppy. And others are just fun baskets that we have coming out. Next, we're We're continuing our tradition of sunrise and sunset of mother and son and father and daughter dance April 8th at the resort for only seniors. Juniors are studying and taking the SAT on April 9th, so that's going to be fun. I got to do that. Seniors receive their cap and gowns on April 11th. They'll all be working hard to finish their senior projects. Hopefully all of them get them done. Jeez. Wednesday, April 19th is 8th grade parent night, exposing incoming class to the clubs and activities CHS has to offer. So we have many new ones coming up, hopefully. We have Green Dot, their mentoring programs. Hopefully these students would like to join those ones. CHS Theater Department is proud to present Beauty and the Beast as this year's spring musical. Opening night is April 18th, and they have a total of 7 shows. We encourage and invite them to come and see invite you guys to come and see the Broadway play, I would say. But the play is going to be really cool. DECA Nationals are in Orlando at the end of this month. They're doing fundraisers right now. There's a 3-on-3 tournament at our school for the fundraiser. And this Nationals is April 26th through May 1st. And then lastly, we are holding elections for next year's council this month while continuing to plan for prom and Mr. CHS. Thank you for having me and hope to see you next month.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up, let's hear from Mr. Twitchell from the Coeur d'Alene Education Association with his report for the month. Not here tonight.
Thank you very much. All right, Board Chair Morrisroe, board members, Superintendent Cook, district officials, and anybody else that happens to be here, thank you very much for allowing me this time. I certainly believe in getting ahead of things, and so there is something I need to tell you, which hopefully won't wind up in the papers, but there's always that chance. Over spring break, I had the opportunity, I like to go to auctions and yard sales, and I bought a couple of typewriters, these really nice typewriters, and I was figuring students probably have never used them, so I took them into my class today, and there I am showing them how to use them. And of course, when that happens, Principal Heller walks in. I'm thinking, okay, great, I got the kids all engaged, but immediately, I don't know if you've ever seen Principal Heller upset. I mean, he's a big guy, can have that booming voice if he wants it, and he's like, Twitchell, in the hallway. I'm like, crap, what'd I do? So I'm out there, and he's all, I cannot believe right there in front of students, you're stereotyping. Just get it, both typewriter, say, stereo and two. Come on, man. I figured this would have been really good. All right. So, all right. First off, then, for the real stuff. Move along. In regards to the levy, the CdA wishes to extend a big thank you to everyone involved with it. A big thank you to the board for approving the amount that it was, for taking the risk of raising it. A huge thank you to all the voters in the community that got out and voted yes for that. We see that as a huge vote of confidence for what we're doing in the schools, in the district, in the classrooms, each and every day. All of us literally put our blood, sweat, and tears, hopefully not the blood too often, but definitely the sweat and tears happen each and every day. The students that are in there, we see as our own children, and we only want the best for them. And with this levy, we can hopefully continue to do that and provide more for them. So thank you for all that to everybody that was a part of that. Secondly, I won't speak too much about the later start times for high school. Big thank you for having that on the agenda tonight to begin the discussion of that. I could talk about many things of it, but the experts that have shown up in the past can do a much better job on that. I will say, though, that anything such as that can provide positive results for the students in so many ways, I see it as something that we have to do as a district. It is something that is proven in district after district across the country that it works. It does provide some pain switching to it, but it is for the best, and we need to do that. Lastly, this Friday, this weekend, you'll probably see a lot more Union thugs in town. There should be over 400 union representatives from across the state coming in for the Idaho Education Association Delegate Assembly, or DA as it's often shortened to. On Friday, the plan is for all of us to be wearing red, so if any of you would like to join us, so hopefully if you're downtown at all on Friday, we're hoping that'll just be flooded with red for the Red for Ed campaign. For those of you who may not know, Delegate Assembly, representatives from districts all across the state come to help direct the IEA what we're going to be doing for the next year. What our policies should we be focused on? Last year, one thing that was brought up and discussed was the possibility of a strike. We never took a vote on it, but we had a fantastic discussion about it. And will it come up again this year? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But also at it, as talked about several times too, probably one of the big fundraiser for the Children's Fund, which benefits just students in need, where IEA-CA members can draw from it if they see students need shoes, eyeglasses, a dentist appointment, virtually anything. We can get the money to help them with that if it'll help them perform better in the classroom. And so we're hoping that we can really make a good showing on that and get a lot of stuff local for that auction to happen. And that's all I have this time. Thank you very much.
It was a reluctant applause. I think it was a joke, Mr. Twitchell. Or attempted joke. Board comments. There's nothing signed up here. I just want to echo something that Mr. Twitchell said and just thank the community for showing up, one, to vote, and two, just for their support, both in our discussions that we had over the past several months as we talked about levies and priorities for our community and our school district, but then also coming out and supporting the district like they did a few weeks ago. So, public comment we're at here, and I'll go ahead and read this first. I want to remind the public, while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items. Those wishing to address the board during public comment period are limited to one comment not to exceed 3 minutes. If you have additional comments that you would like to present to the board, you may provide those in writing to the clerk of the board, Ms. Lynn Town. She will ensure that board members receive the additional commentary. Please keep in mind the board members will not respond to public comment. If I determine that an individual's statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. Just have a couple signed up tonight, all familiar faces. All of you great with the time, except for maybe Mr. Casey. He always goes a little long. Is he still here? And I'd love to pick on him for it. First up's going to be Bill Elliott. Good evening, Mr. Elliott.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Cook, district officials, and fellow citizens. I'm Bill Elliott. I'm a parent of Lakes Middle School and Coeur d'Alene High School students, and I'm also a board member of Raising Idaho Standards for Education, otherwise known as RISE. I'm here tonight to address the last item you have on your agenda for the evening, school start times. I'm looking forward to hearing your discussion. I'm going to stay and listen to that because I'm hoping that you will follow that discussion with a formal resolution to establish a work group or a subcommittee of the board to further explore this matter. And I'm confident that as you further explore this matter, that you will take the appropriate action, which is to move forward with implementing later start times for our secondary students for school year 2019-2020. It's imperative that you move on this sooner rather than later, as you will have, you'll want ample time for community education and stakeholder input in the process. And by the way, RISE is happy to assist you in those efforts. We'll be happy to be a resource for you as you go about that community education and community stakeholder engagement. As you know, there's over 20 years of research that shows that without question, school start times here in Coeur d'Alene are too early for our high school and middle school students. The research proves by starting school at a developmentally appropriate time that significant gains can be made in attendance, graduation rates, grades, SAT scores, even athletic performance, and most importantly, improve mental health and physical well-being of our students. And while we don't like to talk about it, we all know that we have a very real and very big mental health and suicide problem in our schools. With that in mind, how can we in good conscience continue to put our kids at risk when it's been proven that those factors can be substantially reduced, in fact, almost cutting the risk of suicide ideation in half by taking the one action of getting our kids more rest by starting school later for our middle and high school students? It's proven that we can take this one action and reduce that risk substantially. It's not a guess, it's proven. We all know that there will be some resistance to making this happen. People resist change every time, no matter what the change is. And there surely will create some inconveniences for some folks. But that's the reason you get the big bucks. That's the reason you as school board members make the big salaries you make. To take the lead and do what's right for our schools and for our students. The only barriers to getting this done would be apathy or an unwillingness to address some logistical challenges like busing. But over 1,000 high schools in this country have already successfully navigated these changes at little or no cost. And we've yet to find a school district who has made the change and then once they've made the change decided to reverse back to their old schedule. Quite the opposite. Those who have moved to the more developmentally appropriate school start times, which means no earlier than 8:30 a.m., have seen dramatic improvements in student performance and student well-being. So with all that, I implore you to move expeditiously towards later school start times with conviction and determination, because it's clearly what's best for our kids. It's simply the best thing for our kids. And any delay in getting that done delays and postpones any benefits that would be gained. Putting it off another year would just delay that. But even more importantly, we would continue to have our kids taking an unnecessary risk with their physical and mental well-being. With that, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you, and we'll be happy to support you in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Next up is Steve Casey.
Good evening. Superintendent Cook, Chair Morsorow, members of the board, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Steve Casey, and my comments are my own and should not be construed as representing any other club, organization, or foundation of which I am a member. That's 25 seconds of my presentation, which is 3 minutes and 25 seconds long, so I'm right on target. For the last 42 years, my family has been affiliated with the Coeur d'Alene School District. My wife and I worked for the district for over 25 years. Our daughter and son both graduated from Coeur d'Alene High School and attended Hayden Elementary School, now known as NEXA. And we currently have 2 grandchildren attending CHS. I am truly vested in the success of this school district and the positive growth of our community. In 1992, we passed a 16.9 levy at 78.5%, resulting in the construction of Lake City High School and the remodel of Coeur d'Alene High School, promising the parity of both high schools. On 5/3/1994 and again on 11/8/1994, the bonds failed at 15.92% and 56.2% respectively. The failure negated the remodel of CHS as promised in 1992 and the construction of a new middle school and the remodel of Dalton. It wasn't until March 2017 that a bond of $35 million was passed at 77.33% that allowed the high schools to remodel and come closer to the parity that was promised in 1992. I share that background as it illustrates the importance our community places on the language contained within our bonds and levies. Over the past few years, Hayden Elementary School has been known as the Hayden Center, the Kinder Center, and now NEXA, and has served the district well. In 2017, with the passage of the bond, the purchase of land, and the construction of a new elementary school in the northwest portion of the district, many assumed that NEXA would become the new elementary school and open its doors in the fall of 2019. That didn't happen for a number of reasons. Nevertheless, for the last 2 years, NEXA has remained at the old elementary school site. Principal Rutherford and his staff have done a masterful job of providing a warm and caring environment for their students, which is what they pledged to do when given the assignment 2 years ago. However, in my opinion, the current site is too small to add another school and trade the existing school to the city of Hayden for parking. Doubling the student population on that site would create havoc with the increased traffic. It would also provide limited playground space for its students. Remodeling the current school to meet the standards of its sister elementary schools would be costly. Which school would you choose as your model? Sorensen, Winton, Dalton? You could pick several others. In the long-range plan of 2015, it stated that it would take $7 million to renovate the Hayden School to the standards at that time. That cost and the current assessed value of the site, as stated in previous discussions, to be somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million is not in the best interests of the school district, in my opinion. We should not make financial decisions based upon emotion, but validate our expenditure of funds on facts. My suggestion, which has been echoed by many voices before me, is to purchase another site for an elementary school in the northwest portion of the district, where the district is experiencing the largest growth, by using the money gained from selling the 10 acres of property behind Hayden Meadows. That value is unknown, and or running another bond. I don't think there's an argument here regarding the need for another elementary school. I urge the school board to host numerous community information sessions to ascertain the feelings of the community at large. In any case, construction of a new school should be in the areas of the greatest need, not determined by emotion. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Casey. And last up here is Dr. Sarah Mora.
Good evening, board. I appreciate the chance to come back and just share a few more thoughts for you on school start times. I'm really here because I knew this was on the agenda for your discussion tonight, and after so many months of showing up to these meetings, I just wanted to come and recap some of the highlights and the research on this issue. If anybody doesn't know me, I'm a child psychologist. I've been a child and family therapist in Coeur d'Alene for about 15 years. And I'm here because so much of my day-to-day life is spent trying to keep young people alive and well when truly what they need is sleep. They're exhausted, they're chronically exhausted. And for any adults in the room who've had one bad night of sleep, no big deal. 2 bad nights of sleep, it gets hard. 3 bad nights in a row, you're struggling, your brain's not at 100%, your stress tolerance goes down. And so now we have to take adolescents and take that schedule to 180 days a year where they're in a developmentally inappropriate schedule for their biological sleep needs. So we've met with you and tried to bring in some different research on this issue. Of course, we have huge academic benefits, and I just want to highlight for you, they find a 13.3% higher graduation rate from high school when we push back school start times. We see nearly a 10% increase in college attendance rates. We see 20% more A grades in first period classes. One high school reported 200 fewer tardies per day. So we know academically, without a doubt, this is one change that dramatically improves the educational outcomes for our young people. When it comes to mental health, we have policies, statements very strongly worded from the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the CDC, the AMA, from pediatrics, from nursing, from sleep medicine, that all say that we know that young people not getting enough sleep is detrimental to mental health across the board. We see increased rates of depression, anxiety, suicidality, ADHD symptoms. Your brain just doesn't work well well when you're sleep deprived. It just doesn't work well emotionally, for focus, for memory, for attention. When it comes to physical health benefits, we see less drug use when we change school start times. We see healthier eating habits, lower obesity rates. The obesity and eating habits are a lot about hormones. So sleep cycles change based on the endocrine system changing during puberty. And so if we're messing up the sleep cycle, we're also messing up hormone balance, which has this detrimental kind of chain reaction in physical health habits. We know that there's safety issues. With a 1 hour pushback of school start times, we see a 16.5% reduction in car accidents for students. So that's really important. Of course, for me in mental health, suicidality is a huge concern, and my heart breaks every time we have another loss in our community. And the numbers on that from this massive survey that was done is that we see a 1.86 times increased risk of suicide when we have loss of sleep over time. And that's controlled for mental health factors, so independent from depression. When we talk about athletics, we know that students who don't get 8 hours of sleep per night have a 68% increased risk of getting injured. We're slower to heal when we're not sleeping well. Our immune system doesn't work as well either. In professional sports, they consider sleep to be the #1 most effective and powerful performance enhancer for athletes. When we're talking money, a huge survey, a projective analysis done in 2017 showed that if we were to implement this change across the nation, we would save $9 billion a year. And that's only considering 2 factors, high school graduation rates and car crash reduction. So that's a gross underestimate of the true economic gains for our society. So it just comes down to what are we doing and why are we doing it? And if we know, and we have 20 years of research across fields showing that we know what we're doing is developmentally inappropriate and harmful and dangerous, it's a public safety issue. Why are we doing what we're doing knowing that it goes against all of the science from all the fields who care about adolescent well-being, including academic outcomes? So what is it going to take? And so I'm here tonight knowing that there's going to be a formal board discussion on this, saying we don't need to do more research, we don't need a pilot program, we don't need to survey the community on opinions, we know what needs to be done. It's very strongly documented and worded and supported by all the leading health agencies in our country. So now the question is, what is it going to take to do what is right, even though it's hard? It will be a hard transition, but it is absolutely the right thing to do. So I really hope that there'll be some action plan. Let's form a committee. Let's get the main players involved. The biggest thing is transportation. We can figure this out. And I just want to mention, I have had the chance to speak with some of the local high school principals and school leaders. And the sense is, we just got to do this. We know it's what's right. It feels complicated, but we just have to do it. The support is there. And so as the RISE organization has volunteered to be available, I am also available to help with parent education, to help with community outreach. And I just would love to see that there'll be really strong action taken to figure out how do we make this plan? How do we actually move this into a long-lasting improvement for our community? It's not just the kids that benefit. It's the family unit, it's the community, it's the economy. And so I really hope that this will be the time, and this is the board that'll say, this is hard, but we're going to take heroic action and do what is right, even though it's hard. So please do find a way to make this a reality for all of our people in this community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that will end public comment for this evening. Okay, next up is our consent agenda, and this is kind of usually standard operating procedure. We do this at once, but we need to break it up for a couple of different reasons here. So I'm just going to go ahead and chunk it up into these small pieces. So is there a motion to approve consent agenda item A?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on item A? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda item B?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
And I abstain.
Okay, and Ms. Brumley abstained. Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve consent agenda items C through G?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on items C through G? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We're moving along. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda item H? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, I have some on this one, and that's why I asked that be pulled separately. So this is a change for the district where we're actually looking at 2 calendar years at once. Typically, in years past, we've always just approved the next year. And I appreciate that Dr. Cook brought forward that request or brought forward that change. My concern this evening was the current calendar committee that's within the district looked at some changes. I think we saw some of those changes and felt there was enough resistance that they weren't willing to make recommendations. One of those being that Thanksgiving, we would take the whole week off for Thanksgiving, where right now, elementary school, I think they go Mondays, and then they have Tuesday, Wednesday for parent-teacher conferences. I've heard a lot of conflicting comment about that. I understand that it's late in the year. We need to have next calendar year approved. What I would ask is that we only approve next calendar year, and that we request that Dr. Cook have an administrative committee where they pull together some more folks, which is, I think, is what the calendar committee said they needed, just to really evaluate that. I know at least at the schools my kids go to, or the elementary school my kids go to, that week is before Thanksgiving is extremely ineffective for learning. Most of the teachers are doing 60 or 70% of their conferences the week prior because those families are leaving town for that week of Thanksgiving. And so to me, the parents are telling us we want this week, and I don't think it's very effective. I'd like to see what the attendance data is for that week, because I'm guessing there's a financial cost for us being open that week. And my request of the board would be that we just approve next year's calendar, and that we spend a little more time and get a little more data so we can look at the 2020-2021 calendar and see if it makes sense to make some changes to the calendar.
I'd like a motion for approval of the 2020 calendar.
Withdraw a motion.
Oh, we'd have, or amend? Okay.
Yeah. I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the district calendar for the 2019-2020 year?
Second.
Okay, it was moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye, thank you very much. We're not noticed really to talk about that, but you know, as far as a direction for you on that, but you know, we can in the future, you know, as far as what do we want them to do? Do we want a board committee, a community committee, a admin committee? But
and maybe some of the data that
so maybe we can bring that back at a future board meeting and have it noticed.
Would it be possible in some of the data that we get, I guess our end-of-year survey that we send out to parents, primarily elementary school, I'd like to hear from parents. I think it would be overwhelmingly supportive to take Thanksgiving off. I think Chair Morris was right, that learning, there's not a whole lot of learning that happens that week, so I'd like to hear parents weigh in on what they think.
And I mean, we've moved beyond it, but I think some of the comments I heard, the concerns were the teachers were having to do, you know, conferences on their own time, and at least the teachers I were hearing from, which were a lot, they were saying, well, we're already doing that, and we'd rather have the, you know, we think it makes sense to have that full week off. So, all right. Okay, so consent agenda items I through L. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on those? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then last we have consent agenda item M that was added tonight. Is there a motion to approve that?
Second.
Okay, it was moved and seconded. Any discussion on item M? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Hearn has abstained. Okay. All right, a little different than usual, but we made it through. Thank you. Okay, we're into finance information items here. Dr. Cook, are you handling these tonight?
One of the things that we wanted to make sure we could get from you guys is a commitment. We would like to recommend that we fire up the finance subcommittee again this year, and we would be requesting at least a board member or two to be a part of that, along with recruiting of a couple of community members. But if we could get a soft commitment from one or two of you guys to be a part of that committee, it'd be nice. And if you recall, I think last year might have been the first time this was used. It's not a decision-making committee. It's a committee that helps provide an information source so that when it comes time for negotiations, there's pretty clear picture of how the process works, so that there's absolute transparency on the financial status of the district and what resources are coming in and the expenditures that would be expected, so that we can build a budget for the 1920 school year.
Yeah, I believe Trustee Eubanks and I sat on this last year. And this was something new, that a new concept, at least for Coeur d'Alene schools, that Dr. Olson brought with him. And the group met 3 times. We did a revenue, expenditure, and
budget.
Budget?
I think so.
Oh, I think it was on the current budget, and maybe kind of agreeing how that might shake out.
On our note, it says first projected deficit, next discuss revenue.
Oh, thank you.
Discuss expenditure changes.
Yes, thank you.
So I would recommend.
It was a well worth committee. I thought, as someone who served on that and negotiations, it lended very well into negotiations, because some things that previously negotiations spent a lot of time discussing, we were able to get some agreement there. And one of those I can think of that came out of there is, you know, traditionally with units, we've been somewhat conservative in the way we budget those. And I think last year the original recommendation was that we just maintain our student units as the same as the year before. And after that budget subcommittee tossed that around for a few hours in discussion, we actually thought, well, that's not realistic. We know the district's growing. We know more students are coming into our district. And so we looked at the past, and we actually moved that unit projection to 513 or 512, something like that. But we moved it up a few units to recognize that. And I'm not sure that would have taken place if we didn't have that budget subcommittee and spent that extra time talking about that. So I thought it was well worth it. I liked hearing that you said some community members, because there were none last year, and I think it would be nice to have some community members on that committee.
And I did fail to mention that I think there was at least one, or was there 2 CEA members on the two committee members last year in the subcommittee.
Yeah, 3. Let's say 3.
Quorum.
So I think it's great. I'm serving on negotiations, so I would like to serve on this, but I think someone else needs to as well. Okay. And I don't have to if someone else, you know, there are 2 who want to, but. Okay. So Ms. Pickford and myself will do those. All right. Finance report.
Kind of hoping there's no questions.
Yeah, was in the packet. Ms. Ebner's not here to answer questions for us tonight. But as you know, we've kind of shifted our model a little bit. So the finance presentations, where we're spending more of our time in discussions here at the board meeting, the finance report's in there for our evaluation and for the public's evaluation. Any questions for Dr. Cook? Okay.
And I would just remind the board that we're always glad to take those by email if you wish to send them early, and we will always produce those answers to your email, and then also add those into the board book so that they're available to the public. So any questions that you might have as we publish on Friday at 5. If those questions come to you sooner and you want to go ahead and send those to us, we don't mind answering those quickly.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're on to page 2 here, into action items, and the first action item tonight is item C, the Northwest Expedition Academy recommendation. And this, I think we've broken into 2 parts. As you recall, I believe it was just 2 months ago that we started this, or we had a discussion and we talked about kind of programmatic and staffing concerns or issues possibly in facility issues that we've been dealing with for forever, it seems like. And so, Dr. Cook, I'll turn this over to you and proceed how you'd like.
Yeah, so a couple of months ago, if you recall, we did have a presentation in which we talked about, I think the beginning of the discussion was a resolution in which we all agreed, the board passed at a 5-0 vote, that no student in the school district would be in a substandard facility. And so it started off with just facility conversation, but as we dug into it, we realized that we shouldn't just stop and only focus on facilities, but also staffing and any kind of resources. So we're actually going to do a 2-part presentation for you today. And Dr. Orozco is going to start off with this presentation on staffing and specifically how we're going to take or give some recommendations on what we would do to I think the Nexa school community with regards to staffing and resources, and then we'll follow up with Director of Operations Jeff Voller will be presenting a summary of our guidance with regards to recommendations on facilities and what next steps might look like with regards to that. So this is, just bear with us on this. There's a lot of information here. This was a very challenging conversation and a lot of things that we're hoping to try to have some resolution on tonight.
Good evening, board members. Am I on? Okay. You had a chance to look at this information a little bit already in the board packet, and what you see there is that we tried to compare Nexa to 2 different sort of subgroups of schools, to schools that were similar in size, and then schools that had similar needs in terms of the socioeconomic status of families at those schools. Some of the and as you read in my report, we entered Nexa with very little knowledge when it first opened last year, with very little knowledge of how long we would be there, and so the temporary nature of the school, and also very little knowledge about that interesting zone that we created when we did that hard work to create that Nexa zone. As a result of that, we see some staffing needs that we'd like to address, and that list is down below. And the first, of course, is to increase the title FTE there from 0.5 to 1.0. As you know, right now, our title teacher at Nexa is 0.5 title, 0.5 ALP. And we would like to increase that support for children who are in the title program. Those funds would actually come out of Nexa's title budget, so not out of the general fund. And that, of course, makes a big difference as we're sort of calculating these funds. The second increase that we feel is very much needed at Nexa is 1.0 FTE for special education. We have a remarkably gifted special education teacher at Nexa, and Vanessa is doing some extraordinary work co-teaching with our general education teachers at Nexa, and doing some we're seeing some big improvements in the delivery of special education IEPs to our children. That said, when you look at numbers at Nexa, when you look at children with exceptional learning needs at Nexa, and we compare that with other schools, or for instance, even with Fernan, who also has a life skills program, what we see is that we fall short. Mr. Rutherford is here, but I think we've spoken plenty about the need to have an additional special education staff member there. Probably the biggest need, if we were to ever identify or prioritize, that would probably be the biggest need there. We would like to offer NEXA the same amount of librarian time that we have in other schools, and that would mean a 0.3 increase to give them a full-time librarian there. As you all know and have seen, and I think you've heard in conversations with the NEXA staff, our kids there at NEXA do a lot of research with their projects, and having access to library time and access to library materials would be huge for them, and that's difficult when there isn't a librarian there full-time. We'd also like, as a side note, we'd also like to just increase the book resources there in the library itself. You all know that was an issue, and you heard the NEXA staff talking about how much they would like to have the kind of nonfiction materials for research there in the library. So that's a side note to you that we'd like to do that. Finally, we'd like to increase the administrative staff at NEXA by 0.5. NEXA is almost the size of Bora, Bryan, and Fernan and Winton, as you can see there. But when you look at something as important as IEP meetings, what you notice is that you see that number 53 IEP meetings. That is tremendous for one administrator to attend those meetings. You look at a place like Fernan where they have, I think, does it say 89? My poor eyes. 89 IEPs, and that's with 2 full-time administrators. And as you know, administrators are required at IEP meetings, and that's just a little bit. I've had a chance to spend time at NEXA, and I know that Mr. Rutherford does a magical job of trying to juggle all those responsibilities, administrative responsibilities. But that seems, if we were able to increase the admin even 0.5, that would make a big difference. And then, if NEXA were to grow in size, we'd have to address that again. But right now, Mr. Rutherford and I have spoken, and he believes that 0.5, this is where he's supposed to nod yes to me, where 0.5 where 0.5 administrative help will help him. So as you see at the bottom, that's a total of 1.8 FTE from the general fund budget that we'd like to add to the NEXA staffing.
Okay, so any questions for Dr. Roscoe or Dr. Cook on this? This is actually an administrative decision, so it doesn't take board action. This is done through the budgeting process, so we'd approve through the budget. But it's up to Dr. Cook and team to establish how those funds are being spent. So really, they brought this to us for information. We would expect to see this, or I would expect that we'll see this in May as we are looking at budgets and budgeting priorities. That they probably want some head nods or some thumbs up or thumbs down from us, so they know at least where we stand. But then they would, depending on those nods, build a budget with these changes in mind or not in mind. So,
Dr. Roscoe, I just appreciate the presentation. It was really well laid out and very easy to understand and to justify and explain. So I very much appreciate that, and it makes it easy to agree and see the need. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And hats off to our folks in the special education department, Frank and his crew, for helping us with those numbers as well.
And I just was reflecting back to our listening sessions with the staff and the families, and I remember the one thing that came up is they really want to be kept in the loop. So just to make sure tonight we're taking good minutes and we're sharing it with family that couldn't be here tonight, so they'll know when they see this, because I think this is information that'll make them happy.
Thank you. I agree with you.
Didn't we start that school with kind of bare bones budget and staffing? I mean, I guess maybe you could answer that question. I know that Mr. Rutherford would feel that way.
Yeah.
So
there was a little
staffing there. We have a lot of other decisions to make about property, which we'll talk about tonight. But it seems to me the staffing is a little thin there, from my walking around the school anyway.
I think so. There was this sort of adventurous spirit when we opened next at the Hayden site, sort of like camping, you know. We're going to do this for a year, right? And that lasted about 2.5 weeks. But and it's quite remarkable that with the staffing that they have right now, what they've been able to do at Nexa. And so I just congratulate Mr. Rutherford and his staff for what they've been able to do, but I sure do appreciate the trustees' support in these staffing changes, because I think it will make a big difference for our Nexa children.
I'd like to just make kind of 2 comments on it. One, I think, Trustee Hearn, you're right. We did bare budget it when we opened it, because if you'll recall, we originally were opening it for 1 year. Of course, 1 year turned into 2, and 2 turns into something to be determined. But hopefully we'll have that discussion. We'll have a better idea what that's going to look like here in a minute. On the staffing, there's 2 that give me pause. I understand the recommendation. I'm okay with it. Librarians and ALP staffing. And I think because if you go around and do school tours, like we all do, that's one you hear the big schools talking about, because it's a lot different to teach a library. The librarian is teaching a course. And I think this last year we gave some additional supports to librarians in the big schools to teach that course that allows for the traditional teacher to have some prep time. But when you're teaching library to 750 students at Ramsey, there's a lot of checking in books and checking out books and teaching and all that sort of thing. So I can see our big schools saying, geez, guys, this isn't really fair, because we have 2.5 times as many students and we do it with 1 librarian. I think the same goes with ALP. We allocate that kind of by building and not by student population, meaning the number of students who are testing into that. And I think maybe that's a future discussion, but as we come out of the curriculum audit, I hope that's one thing that we look at, is just how we allocate resources for our gifted and talented program or our advanced program, however we want to term that. But because I think there's some inequity in that. But I understand the recommendation and I'm okay with it. But I know those big schools are going to be calling you.
Oh. I'd love to respond to that a little bit, Mr. Morrisroe. One of the things I'd like to say is that I don't think you'd have any argument from any of our elementary administrators about the challenge to figure out how do we create something that feels a little more equitable in terms of personnel in our libraries, for exactly the reasons that you said. And we've been doing a lot of sort of brainstorming and the last 2 years with the librarians themselves about how do we address this? How might we give them more support to our larger schools? And because you hear their stories about not having breaks and some of those things. So please know that that's on our radar. And I don't think it means that Nexa shouldn't have a full-time librarian. It means that our schools with larger populations need even more, I think. I think the second thing I just want to call to mind in a little bit is just the notion about the 0.5 increase in the not increasing the ALP to 1. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out as other decisions are made about Nexa in terms of ALP support and title staffing as well. I know that Nexa is doing some interesting work with how do we create an inclusion model for all of our kids with special learning needs at any sort of end of the spectrum, and how do we offer co-teaching that meets their needs right there in the classroom, so that we're not pulling children out of that general education classroom, so that they're getting the learning that they need and they deserve in the classroom with their teacher. So that's a place also at Nexa where they're kind of pushing the envelope, learning together, and it's kind of exciting work. And that, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Roscoe. Any other questions regarding the staffing changes there? Okay. Dr. Cook, I'll send it back to you regarding the facility discussion.
Yeah, so the second part of our conversation tonight is going to be specific to recommendations about facilities. And if, as you've noticed in your board packet, there's a lot of information in there, a lot of information, including projected costings of multiple options depending on what the board's purview would be. So I'm going to ask Jeff Voller, our Director of Operations, to kind of walk you through the process of how we got to this point, including the options of what potentially would come from us as far as recommendations for what we should do with that facility.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Morris-Rowe, trustees, Superintendent Cook. I want to start tonight by just kind of reminding, and I know this was said as we started this topic, but we're here because of the resolution that was passed to take a look at creating a sustainable, equitable facility for the Northwest Expedition Academy. And part of that, when we passed that resolution, it tasked us to look at several different options to bring before you guys for consideration. So in doing so, we looked at several different options actually. So one option being what we call update and repair. So that's taking the existing facility and fixing it up and doing what we can with it from where it is now to creating something that would be equitable without doing additions and major construction other than fixing up what's existing. The second option that we looked at is remodel and additions. And so that's basically taking and doing most of what we would talk about in this first segment, and then also connecting buildings, adding classrooms, building a new gym or expanding a gym, and relocating the cafeteria or expanding the cafeteria. The third option is probably one that's fairly familiar to you because it's one that we've talked about fairly recently as we're making a decision for the new elementary school. But that would be reconsidering the land swap with the city of Hayden and building a brand new elementary school on that location. And the fourth option is to move Nexa to the Prairie Elementary site, the new site that we're going to be constructing the elementary school on. And it kind of goes ... because there's some questions as to what we would do if we consider that option, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So let's talk a little bit about what's happened since we gave that resolution in February. The first thing we did is we met with the Nexa staff, and the district administration and the Nexa staff worked on a document to help identify some of the needs that we should consider if we do a update and repair on the facility. As we went through that list, we sat down and met with the staff, and we broke them into work groups, and we said, help us prioritize these. We prioritized those into a must, a should, and a wish list. And I'll get into those in a little more detail here in just a minute. The next thing that we did is the district administration hosted a listening session with the parents of Nexa. And again, we had them break into work groups and facilitated a discussion in which actually they facilitated it with themselves. And they gave us some priorities. And just to highlight some of those, in your board packet, you have a full summary of that listening session. But some of those top priorities included improve the library, keep the project-based learning model at the current location, bring back a music program, add full day K, and they would really like a barn and an outdoor learning and a recreational facility to facilitate their project-based learning. I knew this was going to be really hard to see, but again, you have this in your board packet, but I'm kind of using it as a placeholder just for something that we can discuss here. So this is a summary of what we talked about with the Nexa staff, and it goes into detail of really all the little items that would need to be addressed in that facility. We have everything on that list from really kind of large to small, being fix the 2 holes that are in the library floor, to pulling out the old radiator heaters that are not being used, to looking at, what would it cost if they did that new project-based learning kind of outdoor shed type center that they've described that they would like. And so again, that's in your board packet. I hope you guys reviewed that. And I recognize again that this is really difficult to read on the screen here, but please reference that in your packet. So as we look at this repair and update category, and what's on the screen right now, I broke it out from what you have in your board packet to this is a list of the must includes that the staff gave us. And so it's breaking each one of those down And I think you guys can read the details in that, and rather than going through. And what we did then as staff, and I want to commend Brian Martin for his help with this and his expertise and just his knowledge of our district to help put together, to meet with some different contractors and put together some cost options for each and every one of those items that's on that list, to create some financial responsibility that we feel like we would have if we consider this option. And so, we've got everything on this list from permanent signs at $2,000 to, just some of the larger items, that will get up into the hundreds of thousands of different cost estimates in there. Replacing windows, for example, would be a couple $100,000 endeavor if we replace the windows in that existing building. So that is the must list. As we move on to the next one, this one actually, we took that list because, so the total on that one was about 1.8 million if we just complete that list. So we said, well, what if we phase that and look at it a little bit differently? So I took this list of priority 1 again, and we kind of talked about it as district staff, and we said, well, what are some things that if we just really had to do some things, what could we do? And so we pared that list down a little bit to look at it from a little bit different perspective, and that gave us about a little over a $500,000 total of just doing some of those priorities that are on that list. So then we look at what the staff gave us as their priority 2 and priority 3. So those are their shoulds and their wishes. And in all honesty, as we got through it, there weren't a lot of wishes that came out of this, but there were still quite a few of the things that we should consider to bring this facility up to an equitable standard. And so if you look at that, we've got about 1.4 million in the priority 2, the shoulds, and we've got about $85,000 in the additional priority 3 of wish lists. And those included using the exposed mechanical systems to use it as a teaching tool. And there's a couple different phases of some asbestos removal that we could do. So we put that in the priority 3 because that deals with roofing structures that, if we're not touching those, we don't have to abate those on the exterior of the building. So if we look at that option of repair and update, and we just kind of bring all those together now in a summary, we look at the must, the should, and the wish list that the staff gave us. We're looking at about $2.8 million. We would factor in about additional 20%. That would be the architectural fees, engineering, general contract fees, permit fees, kind of the general things that go into construction projects like that for an additional $500,000. That brings us to a total of $3.4 million if we go with that option. The second option to consider is looking at remodel and additions. And I just want to remind you, and I know a lot of you weren't on the board at this time, but in 2014, we retained Architects West, and they designed several different concepts for us to look at remodel and additions. And there were actually 4 different concepts that they gave us, and I just put 2 up on a slide here just kind of as a reference to show you a couple of the different design options that they had. And, should we consider going this direction, we can certainly dig a little bit deeper into some of those different design options. But really, the square footage is similar, and it's kind of at this point looking at how would we stack boxes to create the space that we need. And with this option, we'd be looking at remodeling and updating existing spaces. We'd be connecting the 2 different buildings. We'd expand the cafeteria, construct a new gym, and add additional classroom space. A cost estimate for remodel and additions. Again, part of the exercise with Architects West is they gave us an opinion of probable cost. And between the 4 different options, within about $100,000, they averaged $7 million for that option. But I want to remind you that that was given to us in 2014, and we know what construction has done. And so asking a couple different construction professionals, Architect West again, to give us a kind of a new opinion on that. It was recommended that we look at an inflation factor of between 23 and 25% to get some realistic numbers for what that would cost us today. And so we'd be looking at about between 8.6 and 8.75 million to do that option. The third option then again is the new school on the existing property. And as I mentioned, that's one that's probably fairly familiar to you guys because we've just had recent discussions over the last couple months as we were determining where the new elementary school was going to go. And just to remind you that the district currently owns 5.5 acres on that property. The consideration would be to trade 0.98 acres to the city, and that would include the school, the portion of the school that's kind of the main, where the main office buildings are. The district in exchange would receive 1.76 acres from the city that we're currently using for parking and drop-off for the students. That would create a 6.28 acre site for the school. And just knowing through the exercise that we have just gone through with new schools at about $205 a square foot in construction costs, plus our soft costs and things that we'd add to that, we'd be looking at a $12 to $12.5 million project for that option.
Jeff, that's in today's cost.
Yes. Yep, that would be today's cost. Mm-hmm.
And same is true on all these. That's
correct.
What it would cost today.
Those are if we were to do those today. Yep. This is the site plan that we had originally been looking at with the land exchange to the city of Hayden. So just kind of bringing back to this your attention, and I know you guys have seen this site plan several different times, but you can see the school in the upper portion of that. You've got the bus loop on the right-hand side, and then the lower left-hand corner would be the existing school that would go to the city of Hayden with some shared parking that comes around the bottom, wrapping around into kind of tie the city of Hayden property to our property with that. So this slide brings things together for you, kind of looking at the different options that I just walked you through. So update and repair, you've got $3.4 million, remodel and additions, you're at 8.75, and a new school on the existing property with the land swap, you're at $12.5 million to that. And then again, the option to move Nexa to the Prairie site. I think it's important that we consider, what's the timing of this? And obviously a funding mechanism needs to be in place for any of these options to happen. Unfortunately, the district doesn't have, $3 million to begin a project, and all the way up to $12 million, we know something would have to happen in terms of a funding mechanism. And so from the time that we passed a bond or an SPFL or whatever it is that you guys determine that we're going to do moving forward, we basically have about a 22-month process for any of the two options that would include the major additions or new construction. We could do it a little bit quicker if we're just going to do update and repair. That would be about a 12-month window. But overall, from the time of plan design, working with the architects, bidding the project, awarding contracts, construction, until the end of completion, we're really realistically looking at 22 to 24 months.
In this timeline is not taking into account passing the SPFL or the bond?
That is from the time that it passes, correct.
That it passes.
Yes. So what are the next steps? And I kind of bring you back to this again. On the top here, you see what are the different options, what are the costs associated with those. On this slide, I also gave you what are some of the highlights of those. So if we do update and repair, it's obviously the most cost-effective manner if you just compare the different dollar values that are up there. It's the shortest time frame. If we look at the remodel and additions, it creates equitable space. The HVAC systems were designed for add-ons, so they were strategically built that we could add on to those buildings and basically just tie into the existing system. There's potential for additional program expansion at the site. If we look at the new school on existing property with the land swap, it's a good site plan. It addresses the major concerns. The potential for program expansion is also there. If we look at what are some of the challenges, going back to the left there on update and repair, the gym location in that school is definitely a challenge. And part of the challenge associated with that is that the gym is all part of the same floor structure. So the floor joists run across the gym, and those same floor joists run right into the classrooms. And so as they're bouncing a basketball, it's reverberating through the entire school. And that's something that, through update and repair that we really would not be able to address. It would have to probably be recreating something different to use with that space. The cafeteria remains too small. There's still some parking concerns. And there's some real challenging bus loop issues on that site as it exists right now. And again, funding sources and timeline is a challenge for all three of those different options. Remodel and additions. Some of the challenges are constructing during school, parking concerns, and bus loop issues. Again, same challenges there. And looking at the new school on the existing property with the land swap, again, constructing during school. And I think there's question of location. Is this the right location for a school to be? And again, funding source and timeline. So where do we go from here? And again, I want to take you back to the resolution that was created to create an equitable learning environment for the Nexa community. As we consider the options that are outlined here, we know that a funding source will need to be identified, and then we can start any of the update or construction projects, looking at a 1 to 2 year timeline after the passing of or securing the financing for it. While updating and repairing the gym seems to make fiscal sense at first look, we still have a school site that has a gym located in the middle of class space and is part of the same floor structure, with a cafeteria that's too small and parking and bus loops concerns. The remodel addition option will create equitable space and provide necessary updates and even create new potential for new program expansions. However, we'd still need to take a look at the parking and bus loop concerns. Funding source, timeline, and major construction with the school in session are still concerns. A new school on the existing property is a viable option, and the site plan is solid. However, is this the right location for a school? And again, funding source and timeline are concerns. So weighing the factors that we've presented, the hours of discussion, and I challenge you to ask Dr. Cook how many dots of texture he has on his ceiling as he's laid in bed contemplating this decision. It's our recommendation that to create a suitable and equitable learning environment in a timely manner for the current Nexa community, we recommend that the staff and students move to the new school site being constructed on the Prairie site at the opening of the school, August of 2020. We recognize that zones will change and recommend that the current zone students for the Nexa as it is right now be afforded the opportunity to be grandfathered into this school for the duration of their elementary years if they choose. I want to be clear that the facility challenges that we are addressing here are a district challenge and not a Nexa challenge. Moving forward, our administration team will continue to work with the Long Range Planning Committee and the board to provide information so that we begin to make immediate plans and recommendations for the future of this facility and work to complete a demographic and boundary study for consideration and location for the next elementary school. Any of these facility options presented tonight can be reasonable options for the future consideration of our district needs. Due to the funding source and timeline constraints, we recommend that Nexa move to the Prairie site as their home, allowing the district to continue to best plan for the future needs moving forward. And with that, I think I will turn it over to discussion and questions that you guys might have.
Jeff, I had a quick question. We have some Hayden folks here tonight, and I know we chatted about touching base, and we haven't dialogued with them in quite some time. And I'm just curious, after your conversation with the city planner, how are we doing? We appreciate you guys even sitting down at the table and talking to us about all of these options, and it's been a very long conversation, and I think you guys have been fair and good partners, and so I'm curious, how your conversation was and where we stand.
I did speak with the city planner, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically what she said to me is that you guys are still very interested in the possibility of considering something, basically that the city of Hayden has a great need for a community senior center for them, and some of their concerns are, do they wait for the school district to make a decision? And, but they recognize that they have needs as well. And, so do they sit and wait for us, or do they consider to look at options to fulfill their needs? And so, she reiterated that certainly that's an option that they would still be willing to entertain with us and consider. And
did you guys discuss at all the remodel option where we weren't doing a land swap, we were just doing a remodel of the facility?
Well, I mentioned that was certainly one of the options that we'd be exploring, and I think if we did that property retains with us, and that would probably push the city to lean more towards, well, what's their next option and moving forward, and for what they need to do to fulfill their needs for a community center.
Yeah, I know parking's a challenge for everybody in that location, and they've been generous to allow us to use that bus loop. But when we look at the remodel plans, I saw that you had parking and bus loop, and for me that just resounds really loud that would be an issue with the remodel, and it would be something that we'd have to talk about, because we would need some sort of bus loop, and I'm not sure it would have to be an equitable situation. So I think.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
We discussed that. First of all, Steve Griffiths.
Hold on, Steve. I'm sorry, I can't let you do that. She did, but if it's against, I can't. She did.
I think the point is, as we start talking about all these options, that we're really clear that the remodel option we haven't really fully explored with the city of Hayden as closely, and that parking space, the bus loop that we've been using so generously, I think it would be something that we would have to really, if we're going to consider that as an option, clarify a little bit more down the road.
I'd like to say a few things. As we know, this is an 83-year-old school, and we've all visited the school. I visited it twice before spring break and walked around, and frankly, when I left there, I was pretty upset. I would probably use the word appalled about some of the conditions that some of the our staff were working in. There were some Nexus staff were working in literally storage rooms above the gym, and it's just an inadequate facility. I think we can all agree on it's an inadequate facility. I have, and it's not based, Mr. Casey, on emotion. It's based on, I'm trying to think about this logically, but I am just not into putting lipstick on a pig. I am not into the district spending a lot of money on this building. I think we either build a new facility on that property, which would be my first choice, or we move next over to Prairie and then make a decision about that property. But I think that I've for some time felt that we should build a new school in that, and we already have the plans. In conversations with Dr. Cook, we've talked about that there could be a demographic study done to see if that in fact is the best place to put a new school, and I'm willing to consider that. I'm not totally hung up on that side, but I think that the demographic study would show that that is a good place for a new school. I mean, because of the growth that's happening in Hayden, and that's pretty obvious. We've all seen some of the housing projects and et cetera that's going on in Hayden. The area is growing. I think a new school is there. Now, there was some question, well, gee, should we put a new school there? Well, the decision to put it, because it's too close to Hayden Meadows, that decision was made 25, 30 years ago when they decided to locate Hayden Meadows next to Hayden Elementary School down the road. It's not any closer there than it would be for the site on Prairie from Atlas. I mean, I don't think that's, to me, the question is that the location to be? I think we should be building a new school there. I think we should move on this thing as far as a bond or plant facilities levy as soon as possible. Meanwhile, I think we need to have because we need a new school, we need to have a demographic study done as soon as possible also to see the best location of a new school. Now, we don't have to purchase more property. We just purchased 40 acres of land over on the west side of town if we decide we want to put an elementary school there and not the Nexus site. But anyway, my point I'm trying to make is I don't think that Nexus program should be in that building for another year. For one more year and that's it, and they should move to the new site, and we should figure out what else we're going to do with that property. I just don't. I'm just not into putting millions of dollars into that old building. I just don't think that's a good use of taxpayers' money. I have more to say, but I'll shut up for now.
Mr. Hearn, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly there, because I'm not sure I did. I thought I heard you saying to you there's two options. It's either you build a new school there or you move the Nexa folks over to the Prairie site. But then did I just hear you at the end say?
Well, I think this is why I'm envisioning it. Right. Okay, if Nexa moves to the Prairie site, we still have that property, right? Mm-hmm. That could be another new elementary school. That would be dependent on what's the best decision. So I'm not saying I'm not into giving up on that property yet but I'm willing to look at the data, see what the demographic study says. And maybe the best thing to do is to sell that property, as some people have encouraged us to do, I've been kind of resisting that for 3 or 4 years now, but I'm willing to look at the study and see what's the best place. But so yeah, I mean, just because I don't think we should be housing kids in that program any longer. I mean, in that building for more than another year. And if that's what I think.
You know, for me, you know, when I look at these 4 options, I'm kind of in a similar place. I don't see the update and repair as a viable option to me, because it's still an old facility with a lot of issues where it just doesn't function for today's education system. And I think with a remodel in addition, 1, how do we do that with the students there? And 2, as Ms. May was saying, there's space concerns, especially if we're not partnering with the city of Hayden expanding that property. So I think that's challenging. So for me, the options are you build a new school there, or we move the Nexa folks. And one thing that I heard when I was out at the staff session that we had, listening session, unfortunately I couldn't make the parent one, but I've read the comments, and you know, I think they want definitive answers. And to me, there's only one way we can give them a definitive answer, and that's to move them. Because there's a lot we don't control on building a new school. First, we have to agree. Then we have to run a bond or an SPFL that has to get passed. And then we have to execute and build it. And by the time that happens, those folks are all going to be gone. And they're going to go through this school in 5 or 6 years through the school, because they've been there now 2 years, and never fulfill what they were originally told, which was that they were temporarily going to be here and then be in a new school. And so for me, I guess I'm where Mr. Hearn is. I think the only option for me is to move these students to Prairie. I think we need to figure out what that attendance zone looks like and how we do that, you know, through an attendance zone study, which I know we're already anticipating doing for all of our 11 elementary schools, because we know there's massaging of boundaries that need to be done. That we look to do that, and then we decide what are we doing with the Hayden site and where are we going to build our next school, and is that what the community is going to support, another elementary, or, you know, we have middle school needs, we have high school needs, or middle school needs. We've addressed high school needs, but we know long term we're going to have some high school needs. You know, and one thing I've thought about, I went back to when we changed some boundaries, I think the Open Nexa a few years ago. And you know, we were doing that because Hayden Meadows and Skyway and Atlas were overcrowded. You know, they had 700 kids in those schools that were designed for 550, and most of those parents said, "I'd rather my kids stay here in a portable than move." And for me, some of this debate over what do we do with Nexa is it better to move kids out of the Nexa site, the Hayden Lake site, or out of portables? That's what the debate's been for me in my head for the last 6 months. And I think, you know, there's pros and cons to both, and there's reasons to do both, and I think we should inspire to do both. But I think because of the facility concerns and the equity issues, I think it's move the Nexa folks first, and then we try to address portables. And I think one way, just because of the way property search went this last time and how difficult it was to acquire property, when we're looking at options, that we may need to look at expanding some of the 10-acre elementary schools. Even though I know we want to be at 550, you know, adding 6 classrooms to some of those schools and making them 700 kid schools, you know, may make some sense. You could do that for, I don't know, I'm not going to throw a number out there, but I think it'd be more cost effective to do that than to build another school. But I think that's something we can look at, and that's something long-range planning can look at, and we can talk about as we decide, okay, where are we going to build the next school, and is an elementary the next option, or the highest priority, or is it middle school space, or so.
I'm not going to repeat what the two of them just said, but I also feel the same way. The only choice for me would be to move Nexa to the Prairie site. And I know when we were doing the boundaries for that, we were pulling kids from that area. Originally, where we were guessing we would have a school, and everyone knows how hard the property search has been, but we're already going to fill that new school with Nexa there, and when everything is built up around there, and for the first time we have a land bank over in that area. So I think the future looks good. The kids are coming. They're going to be all there in the northwest area, and I thought this map, it didn't get put on the screen, but where you put all the kids where they live that are attending was huge to see too. So and just knowing the growth that's going to go there, I say that, you know, we can't keep them in there any longer. The best option for me would be move them, and then we still have the Hayden site. We can decide what to do with that, or we can decide, you know, what to do with the 40 acres, because our middle schools are busting at the seams, and I know our high schools are, they're not completely busting at the seams, but they're getting there. So that's my.
Wow. So I appreciated Casey's comment very much about our meeting with the parents and the distinct cry for a finality or a decision or some sense of where they're going to be. And so I do agree that the only way to give that to the staff and to parents is to make the move decision, because it is out of our control when we take those additional steps outside of that. To address Tom's comment about the Hayden site and building there, I would just say at this point I am still not supportive of that, but I am open to having the analysis done to see what it would look like. But I still stand pretty firm, and that would not be my first option. I hate losing seats in our new school, because like Casey pointed out, we are trading, and that was the comment I made to Dr. Cook today. We're trading a substandard environment at Nexa for what's arguably a substandard environment in portables. And so knowing that, but then having to look at the costs to be incurred to put Nexa at a place that's livable in light of the future needs of this district does not make sense. If we didn't need another elementary already and another middle school and another high school in the next 5 to 7 years, I would say we can focus some money there. But I don't think that that's the best bang for our buck. And I appreciate Tom's comment about putting lipstick on a pig. So what I would say to finish my comment is that I really, really want to see the district and long range come back with something very soon as to a plan for where do we look for a new elementary? How are we going to utilize the 40 acres? Are we going to be looking at combining a high school and a middle school plan, a high school and a K-8 plan? Are we going to look at what Casey's mentioned with expansion of the elementary schools as an idea? I feel like ever since I've been on the board, I've been wanting this plan, and I know it takes time, but I'm really at a point that I just want something put out there that says, here's something, this is the amount of money we need, this is when you need to go to the community and start asking for it, because I feel like we're only a couple of years out from a huge ask, and we need a couple of years to talk to the community and tell them really what we need and where we need it and how much it's going to cost us. And so I will support the recommendation with moving our Nexa kids to Prairie with a really strong statement that I want a plan, and I want it sooner rather than later.
I'd like to say, I know that the Nexa parents would like to stay on that site, but at least that's from what I was able to read. They'd like to stay at that site, but I think moving to Prairie is the best solution for the time being. And I think really the choice will come down to, I understand the opposition for at least 2 of the 5 board members here to rebuilding on Hayden. And I, too, am willing to look at the data. But it seems to me the choice will come down to either building on the Swallow property or building at Hayden or doing both. I mean, because we're going to need, even if we didn't move Nexa and we just opened up Prairie, that building would be full the day we opened it. We're going to need at least a couple more elementary schools. Let's be honest about it. We need a new middle school. I think we need to have a plan. I agree, and we need to approach the voters again here within the next year. I'd like to see us get moving on this.
I'd just like to kind of address Mr. Rutherford in the audience and tell him thank you for your service and for leading the school. It has been a difficult road. There's no secret how I felt all along in this process, and I want you to know that it was never because I didn't believe in Nexa. I didn't believe in the location. I didn't believe in what the staff was doing there. I felt as though we made a promise to the community and that Prairie was the best site for the first elementary school. However, I will say that, if we can all remind ourselves and refresh ourselves that since 2015, a construction services group came in and evaluated our district and looked at our facility and looked at capacity, it has always been known that we need not 1 but 2 elementary schools. And I think this board has a duty tonight to our community that's sitting here to say we will be actively looking for the second location for our elementary school, whether it's the Hayden Lake site, whether it's the new property. We don't know that yet, but we know that we have a commitment to meet the needs of this community. And I'm a little bit with Trustee Brumley in that I feel anxious about not remediating portable usage. It makes me uncomfortable. But I also agree, having visited Nexa, that I'm not sure we can give the families what they really want, and that is an answer. However, I would like to honor that. I heard them clearly that night when Trustee Brumley and I were there. They want to stay at Nexa, and I want that to be known tonight, that I am sorry this will probably be a difficult decision for them tonight, but we should do whatever we can to honor expeditionary learning, whether that's providing you with a bus to make sure that your kids get out in the community and are still able to fulfill that passion for expeditionary learning. I know that my 20% up here will support that, whatever it takes. And I want your staff and your community to know that we're thinking about them tonight, that this just isn't our decision. This is the community's decision. And I thank you for your support.
Is it appropriate to ask Mr. Rutherford to talk?
I think since he's staff, we could do that. Yes. Huh? Since he's staff, we can do that.
What is your thoughts on this? We're talking. You hear the way the conversation is going. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, I've been very quiet, nodding, knowing I'm not supposed to say anything. I really believe that our community really just wants an answer. We have lots of planning to do for our future, and without an answer, planning is really difficult. So make an action tonight. I will lead our community and our students to an awesome school, and it'll be successful. So just take action, please. Please.
So moving to the new site,
right?
Although maybe not preferred by a lot of the parents, is something that you guys could make happen and still keep your program integrity and all that.
The way I heard that conversation that night was that the parents were like, yeah, we want to stay here, but if we make a decision, we know that'll be okay too. And bring us to the new site, but keep our same program. And I think the trepidation comes from our parents who might not be zoned in the new school. I think they're the ones most fearful. They're the ones who are believing that they can't afford transportation to get to the new school if they're grandfathered in. I think to fill all those holes for those parents that have given their heart and soul to our school, I think that's where the work needs to be done. If we could do that, if we can give a promise to those parents that says that your kids were there, you supported our school, And your kids get to remain in our school. We still get to do the great work. And the district having a commitment to providing buses so we can take expeditions, so we can get out of our school and do the work that we want to do. We talked about it this morning, and almost every staff member wants their CDL. We'll drive those buses. We will take ourselves anywhere you want to go. The idea of not having to be back at our school by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, by having our own transportation, is a big deal in an expeditionary school. To do overnight expeditions is a big deal in an expeditionary school. It's not a vacation. It's not a field trip. It's work, and those kids are doing work outside the classroom when they take their expeditions, and to be able to further that, I think, is a huge positive asset. So I think if you can make that commitment to the kids that are already there and the parents that are already there, and that we can continue our expeditionary work, I think our staff, our parents, and our children will be okay with your decision, particularly if a decision is made.
And I'd be excited for your staff to start working with Architects West and really be a partner in this project. I think.
Well, that was I was on the election committee when we hired Architects West, and just for that, that was one of my biggest purposes to hire them, is they were all in to work with the kids. And we worked with John Mueller in Architects West when we did Playground for All at Fernand. And what a beautiful process, where the kids got to see him every week, and they got to design their own playground, and they got to do the architectural work with a true architect and really learn what learning is all about, and talk about a foundation of expeditionary learning. I mean, that's it. So our third grade class, who just did tiny houses, that was their foundation for their exhibition night last week, now plan to go to the new site, Prairie, if that's what you decide for us to do, and see what a big house looks like. Take spray paint, measure the radius, perimeter, square footage of the new school site, and plot it out and see what it really looks like, and walk those grounds and see and make learning real for them. So they're excited about a new change, but they're excited about a change. I guess I've said that enough. I'm sorry. I honestly don't mean to be disrespectful at all. I mean to be super respectful, because I know your position is really difficult. You're not satisfying me, like Dr. Cook said and Jeff said. This is not a Nexa issue. It's a district issue. So I think to satisfy those needs, I think making a decision, and we will make the best of the best. I think we've proven that we could do that with minimal staff and with minimal facilities, that we can make an outstanding school. So just give us the opportunity. Put us in that new school next year, and we'll make it an awesome school. So that's my belief.
Okay, so
I'd like to make a motion.
Hang on. Can I make one comment before you
go ahead?
So I think we've, over the past 2 years, I think I'm saying the district collectively, whether it's been individuals or board comments, individual board comments, individual admin comments, there have been, promises made or perceived promises made that haven't been kept in association with Nexa. And so one thing I heard, and I'm not sure who said, I think maybe Mr. Voller said it, but was that if we're making this decision to move the Nexa community over to Prairie, that we'd grandfather those kids in, and I would add that we'd provide transportation for those grandfathered kids. And so I'd like to see, I can't make a motion, but I'd like to see that part of a motion. So that's an official action, and that's at least those folks who may be dissatisfied that we're moving, they know, okay, they're going to support us, and they've agreed to do so.
Okay, so
let's see. Miss Town has written something here.
Well, while you're reading that, I'm willing to make a motion. Or is that the motion right there? That's the motion? Okay, go ahead.
Tom, do you want to speak first?
Well, I was just going to, the motion I was going to make was just that we finally make a decision to move the Nexa school to the new Prairie site in the 2021 school year, as soon as that opens, and that we also provide the transportation necessary for those children, as well as grandfathering those children in. Essentially, that's what I was going to say. That's not very eloquent, but that's what I meant to say. Is that what it says?
Well, pretty much it adds a little, do the second paragraph.
Do the second and add the transportation.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Motion that Nexa move to the Prairie site as their home school, allowing district to continue best plans for future needs. Continue working with long-range planning and board to provide information and begin making plans and recommendations for the future of this facility and complete demographic study. Also that the district provide transportation to the students who will be grandfathered into that program. Is that's a little wordy, but is that all right? Maybe that's my motion. If you want to clean up the language a little bit, Lynn, you're good at that.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on Mr. Hearn's motion?
I just have one additional comment I wanted to make about Bill's comment about transportation for their school, not just for the students to school, but as part of that expeditionary learning process. And just, I don't think it would be appropriate to include it in the motion, but I support that and would want the district to consider and look into that as we make this transition.
I would just like to tell the Hayden folks, thanks for coming tonight. I know we're not letting you speak, but it has been a good partnership so far, and I hope that it continues to be.
I acknowledge you're welcome.
Yes. Yeah, you're out of order. Don't make me throw you out, Mayor Griffiths. Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. The only thing I would say is just on the grandfathering, that's at a minimum, right? And we still got to figure out what the attendance zone is, and there's no guarantee that that attendance zone may, that work needs to be done. But if the attendance zone change,
I think the
we're
intent is
grandfathered.
clear, isn't it, though?
Yeah. Okay.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
It's going to be our recommendation that the attendance zone not be a part of the conversation. So the current attendance zone of Nexa being a consideration for the where the new Prairie site is, that's a completely, in essence, if and when this decision is made by the board, that zone will no longer continue to exist in the new setup, once the new zones are put into place. However, we would honor any of the students that wanted to continue their education in there. But I don't want it to be mistaken that we are going to zone in that area if this winds up being the school, and whether there's a school built at the Hayden Lake site or not, it becomes irrelevant with regards to the zone that exists right now.
Okay. All right. It's been motioned and seconded. We've discussed. I'll get a vote here. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I see none opposed. Okay. Motion carries. All right. Why don't we take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll get going. We've got half a dozen items left. Reconvene the meeting and welcome back. And we are on to action item D, which is course pacing guides for Algebra 2 and ALP Algebra 2, or Honors Algebra 2 as it'll be called next year.
Correct.
Possibly. We may not be offered next year.
The year following. Chair Morrisroe, Superintendent Cook, and members of the board, good evening. We have presented the course pacing guides for Algebra 2 and ALP Algebra 2. We've also provided you the external review from the Idaho Regional Math Center out of Pocatello. Those have also been on public review for the last 30 days. No public comments have been received.
Okay, so I'll just refresh our memories. This was before us last month for information. As Mike said, it was out for a public comment. If you'll recall, this is kind of a Band-Aid modification, if you will, because of some changes in algebra last year. And as you know, we fixed geometry just a month or two ago, that we approved some changes to the geometry track, and then this would change the Algebra 2 track too, just so we weren't leaving any holes. So any questions for Dr. Nelson on the pacing guides here? Okay. So if there's not, there's a motion in the book.
I'll move to approve the course pacing guides for Algebra 2 and ALP Algebra 2 as presented.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay.
I just had a quick question. So when we finish up Algebra 2 and we move to all integrated math, will they buy these textbooks back still from us and switch them out?
That is correct. The proposal for the book buyback is part of our request for action. If that is the purview of the board, Big Ideas Math and Cengage Learning has still agreed to purchase back our existing geometry and Algebra 2 texts, replace them with their Integrated Math 2, Integrated Math 3, if the board so shall choose.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries, Ms. Town. Next item up is the course pacing guides for Math 2 and Math 3.
Once again, Chair Morrisroe, we have presented to you the draft course pacing guides for Math 2 and Math 3. Those also have been on 30-day public review. We did receive 2 comments from a teacher at Coeur d'Alene High School, most of which the comments were more curricular in design and would be best suited to be able to be responded to if the board shall choose to be able to move forward in our professional learning community around those courses. We received no public comment from the community on the texts nor the course pacing guides. In the meantime, also, we did reach out to the Idaho Regional Math Center in Pocatello, who was backed up. In lieu of that, Chair Page, who in your ad hoc committee, allowed us to reach out to a friend who is a professor at Boise State University. She did review our course pacing guides and did provide us some feedback, of which appears in your packet today. She did feel that those course pacing guides did meet the expectations for the minimum standards for those courses. She also did provide us a few extra suggestions on how we might be able to enhance those, especially around the areas of mathematical practice and modeling. Our courses were again reviewed, as well as your comments from the last board meeting with our ad hoc committee, which met twice over the last month, and have put together an informational summary, as well as the timeline that appears on page 139 of your packet. Ultimately, it breaks our work down over the next year and a half into multiple phases. Dr. Cottle collaborated with this work. Did you want to walk through some of this part? Or?
Sure, I can make a couple comments. The reason we broke it down into phases is there's some necessary steps that if we are to move to Math 2 and 3 and want to be prepared for school to start in August, there's some things that we have to accomplish this spring before school is out. And obviously some things that we'll need to do with teachers in form of professional development prior to school starting. Our intent really is to take the Math 2 and Math 3 course pacing guides presented to you tonight and use those as our starting block. But some of our work in June would be to improve upon those and then bring them back to you in July and August so that way we're ready to go for professional development in August prior to school starting. So that is why that first phase is bolded. There are some other things that we've been looking at, for example, an honors and accelerated pathway, and we would like to take some time to work on those. And so you'll see those in those other phases as we progress through the school year.
Just for everybody's benefit as well, I'll share the informational summary from which we discuss. A lot of conversation has been discussed in our ad hoc about an honors pathway. Certainly we have a lot of ideas around that. We'd like to be able to run some of those to you come July, which would include any updates that are made in our professional learning communities once we identify those Math 2 teachers for this coming year. We would have a Math 2 retreat coming up at the end of the year, provide those updates for you as well, and work to present honors pathway course pacing guides for you by the end of this year so that at the beginning of this next school year we can indeed continue our work with our professional educators, making sure that they have all of the updates and expectations relevant to them, all of their updated instructional materials as part of this process.
Dr. Nelson, what are you looking for tonight as far as approval? Are you looking for Math 2 and 3 approval, or only Math 2 this evening?
That would be ideal, certainly, to be able to move forward similar to what we talked about. We have a lot of planning to be able to do. Math 2 would be essential. Math 3 would be a cherry. But at the same time, again, our process would be the same on both of those courses. It would simply solidify the pathway that we as a community agree that this is the path that we need to have. It would allow our buildings to start thinking about that long-term vision for these courses, making sure that all of our teachers are prepared.
Can I add a comment?
Yeah, of course.
A lot of times when we're working, we found this year when we're working with our Math 1 teachers is they're really mindful about missing class time. And so my preference would be to have Math 2 and Math 3 approved so that way we can capitalize on our time this spring and in June to prepare a lot of that work. If you look in the other phases, Phase 3 and Phase 4, we will be looking at some studying on how we can accelerate pathways at the middle school level. We'll also be looking at different pathways or different math options for seniors during their senior year. And so being able to get a jump start in Math 2 and Math 3 opens up time for us to work on those other items as well without burning out folks, but also taking the time to do things well and be thorough. So our preference would be to get the start on Math 2 and 3.
I just want to make sure I understand correctly, though. In regards to practice, Math 2 would go into play next year, and Algebra 2 would still be taught, and then the following year, Math 3 would begin to be the course, and Algebra 2 would go away.
Correct. The implementation plan that we provided last month does show that in the 2019-2020, the course titled Geometry would be replaced by Math 2, and in the 2020-2021 school year, Algebra 2 would be replaced with Math 3.
Would it be possible, would you guys be comfortable tonight, since we haven't received really an independent audit yet of the curriculum? You know, we've seen a 3-sentence summary that said, you know, we met the minimum standards for these courses, but I feel as though that I would feel more comfortable if we could say, yeah, we had this vetted, you know, we did our job, there's transparency in this process. Are we still waiting from the region math, the trust Boise to evaluate it, or is it Region 3 that was going to look at it, I believe?
This is the feedback from Region 3. Certainly what we've done is provide you a summary of that. It got a little bit technical along the way. Certainly we can provide any additional information is provided by them.
I think it's important because I think it needs to be part of the process. It needs to be part of the board packet. It needs to be something that our community can look at. I think we've all committed to integrated math, right? We approved Math 1 last year, and you guys are rolling your sleeves up and you're working hard. And so I wonder tonight if we approve something provisionally or it's not 100%, you know, if we get some more feedback from the curriculum audit, for instance, we're going to have to approve that change or addendum. So is it really important tonight that we have 100%
approval for Math 2, because I feel as though we're missing some of the pieces. I know I sent some questions late today that you haven't had a chance to answer yet, so I apologize. The spring break got in the way, but there are a couple things around professional development that I would like to see, just guaranteeing that our teachers will get adequate professional development. I know your time frame's really tight, but I don't think not saying 100% taking action is preventing us from moving forward. Or do you feel differently, I guess is.
I don't know if Dr. Cook
Yeah,
wants to
so
respond to this.
I want to just make, I did check with the auditors on Math 2 and 3, and because those weren't approved courses at the time of the, when we submitted stuff for the audit, those two things would not be a part of this. If we wanted to have those reviewed, if we wanted to have those things reviewed, they stipulated that would be an additional contract to do that and would be separate from what we were currently under with them.
I guess I misunderstood our conversation, but I feel as though we had an understanding that they would be included. I mean, they're doing a curriculum
Math
audit.
1.
Math 1, but you know, Math 2 and Math 3 go along with Math 1, and so I think it's important if we're telling the community we've conducted a curricular audit. This is the backbone of our secondary math program, and it must be included in the audit if it's to be considered complete, in my opinion. So I think it's something that I would push to have done. Otherwise, you know, we're having our curriculum audit, but we're not having an integral piece.
Yeah, we're not opposed to the idea of doing that. It's just separate. It would be a separate financial cost.
Yes, that's fine, in my opinion.
But I can respond too to some of the questions. I think it would be important to continue with our practice of getting feedback from the Regional Math Center. So as we are approving upon those initial course pacing guides, we certainly can get additional feedback before we bring back those course pacing guides to the board in July and August. As far as our staff, it's very stressful to go into the school year or going to the summer and not knowing what you'll be teaching for the next school year. And so this aggressive timeline in phase 1 is to give us an opportunity to do a professional development and meet with them before school's out. So the timeline's pretty short, but I think we can accommodate some of those concerns and requests throughout that timeline.
I mean, if you look at the timeline, there's in math, this is how Math 1 was done, but there was some tweaking through professional development in the math retreats to the curriculum. And so because of the way the policy was, that didn't have to come back to us for approval. Because of that policy being suspended, it does. And so that we will see this again as those things flesh out. I think having served on this committee, I mean, the concern is that that's time, that's money, that's energy put into that. And so I think it's, are we committed to this? Are we saying we're committed to moving forward with the integrated approach? I know my answer to that, but I think that's really what we're doing, and know we're going to see these back with some modifications and some enhancements through that professional development, the math treats. One thing that for me right now, you know, I still need to see for my 20% is the honors track. I understand the potential accelerated tracks and what Boise's doing, and I applaud what they're doing, but that's not what we're doing. And I'm not sure that we could just switch to that model tomorrow or next year. So I know our two high schools do something different. They don't, Coeur d'Alene offers honors math and Lake City doesn't. But the folks I'm talking to, there's a demand for that. If there wasn't, there wouldn't be 5 sections of ALP geometry right now. Or so, you know, I think for the short term, honors still needs to be part of the equation to me. I think as we move forward, if we have some accelerated tracking similar to what Boise is doing, you know, maybe that changes, but.
So we've started that work preliminarily, and I think we can produce what it is that you guys are looking for. I think this first phase is to give us the opportunity to have both Math 2 and 3 approved. Then we'll bring that back to you guys for continued vetting, allow the departments to have continued vetting on that. In essence, what we've done right now is that we've met the threshold. And that's, none of us are satisfied with that. And that's I want to make that commitment to you, is that we're going to continue to bring this back along with pathways into our math program, our secondary math, actually I'll say our high school math program that can start as early as 7th grade, and what that would articulate for kids that want to go either both in acceleration and through honors. And so we're going to bring back a model to you as soon as, when's our next time with you? Sometime in the next couple of months, with a complete mapping of where potentially we'd like to drive this through, so that kids have their needs met, whether it's through honors courses, through regular math courses, or through accelerated pathways. But the bottom line is it starts with that minimal standard of approval of Math 2 and 3, so we can start training on those.
But we've really essentially preliminarily approved Math 2 and 3. I mean, we've approved Math 1. I guess my point is, I do feel uncomfortable that we're approving courses that haven't been independently audited in any way, shape, or form other than a 3-line sentence from a friend of a friend in Boise. And I think representing the community, not that I'm not trusting any of the work that's been done, because I think it's fantastic, but I'm not sure delaying a formal approval of this scope and sequence or curriculum for 30 days prevents you from rolling up your sleeves and still continuing to work. What it says to the community is that we fully support what you're doing. We are behind you 100% of the way. We approved Math 1, but we want to ensure what we're providing to our community is meeting a base standard. And by getting an independent evaluation, we release ourselves of all of that pressure, and we say, hey, we're holding it up to be proud of, because I'm proud of the program that you're developing, but this is the backbone of our math department. This is the singular biggest curriculum adoption that I believe this district has ever done. And it deserves us holding it out to the community, or to the Regional Math Center in Boise, or to the auditors that came into our community and saying, is this good enough? And I'm sure it will be. But until I see that independent evaluation, I'm not sure I'm doing my fair job for the community. And it has nothing to do with not believing in what you're providing. It's just checking the box, and it's part of my responsibility. And I'm frustrated that we're not looking at this tonight with that any kind of independent evaluation other than 3 sentences. It's kind of like the Mueller report. I've got 4 pages and there's 300, out there. I just want the full report, and I'm sure it will be good. But until I can see that, my feeling tonight is that I'm not saying don't go forward. We are fully committed to integrated math. We have jumped into that pond. We are swimming in it. We've just got to make sure that what we're doing has like any program that's started in a hospital or any place, it gets independently audited to ensure that it's meeting the needs of the community. These are students that we're talking about, and this curriculum I feel is really important. And so I guess that's why I feel a little bit frustrated about it, and I wish we could say tonight that the Regional Math Center, or we had forwarded the formal report, not that we would understand it, but we could hold it up to the community and say, hey, look, this is good stuff, and I'm sure that it is, but we can't say that yet. And I don't know that it prevents us, if we don't approve it tonight, from not moving forward. I mean, we're not going to tread water till we wait for this. No, we're going to keep going, and we're going to work on phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. But I think Chair Morsrow made a valid point that if we approve something tonight and we get information back from 2 different auditors that changes must be made, it's going to have to come back for board approval anyway. So what is the difference between saying 30 more days, we'll have something from the Regional Math Center, maybe the auditors could fast track something and get it to us, and we could talk about it at the next boarding, but meanwhile we continue forward. The next thing I wanted to talk about is professional development, and I want more information on how much professional development are we giving our teachers. I think this must be a tremendously stressful undertaking to go from never teaching or not teaching algebra or geometry for 5, 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden you're teaching Math 2 or you're teaching a Math 3. So I want to make sure that they're getting what they need. And if it's more sub-time before school gets out, I guess my question was, we can't mandate them to work in the summer to get professional development, can we? I mean, once their contract's up, what day are they done working? June 10th? Is their last contracted day? I mean, how many days are we hoping to get in before the next school year for Math 1 and Math 2 professional development? Do we have a rough idea yet?
So we're looking at trying to get 1 professional development in prior to school ending, keeping in mind of all the activities that are going on in May. Right. And then we're looking at 1 in August, correct, during our opening meetings.
So potentially a teacher that hasn't taught algebra or geometry in a very long time is now teaching a Math 2, where they're teaching a course that they're not as familiar with. Is that an adequate amount of professional development for the teachers? I mean, we just passed a levy. We've got some extra money for professional development. Can we be doing more to make it an easier transition for our staff? Could we offer, is that an adequate
I would say it is. As a math teacher, when I taught math, I taught multiple subjects, and I had to recertify, and I had to make sure that I was able to teach those subjects, whether it was geometry, algebra 2, or algebra. And so most of our math teachers that will be teaching Math 2 next year will be those teachers that are currently teaching geometry, and those that are, when we eventually get to Math 3 will be algebra 2. I don't know if you'd like Brett to come in and speak to some of that. And
I would.
Yeah. Put him on the spot since he's in the audience.
Couple things I'd like to say. Trustee May, I certainly understand where you're coming from and appreciate that. I think, one, I'm not sure, based on what we've done so far, we could say we're fully invested in integrated math because we've approved 1 out of 3 courses. It took 2 years to get there, and it was a split vote. And I think there was a lot of difference of opinion within the community, right? Some of it, heated's not the right word, but passionate. And so, I think I understand, I guess, and maybe it's because I've sat on this committee this year, but, where they're needing confirmation of the work they've done and the work they're doing. And I share some of your concerns about the external validation, but I think there's a way that we can commit to this and and still get that. So I'm okay with where we're at right now and moving forward and approving that, but that's just my one.
Well, are you comfortable then if the motion's not to approve the scope and sequence being proposed, but just to approve moving forward with the development of Math 2 and Math 3 without specifically approving the curriculum, I guess is the question?
Trustee May, the only caveat to that I would say is that we are knee-deep in course selection right now, and right now Math 2 does not exist.
Right,
so
that's what I'm saying.
Students
we're committing
are choosing
to teaching.
Courses.
We're committing to teaching. We're saying tonight we're committing to teaching Math 2 next year and Math 3 the subsequent year. What we're not committing to is the exact draft of this integrated Math 2 scope and sequence yet. We want 30 days to have it looked over from an independent auditor. But we're committing to teaching it. We're saying we're going forward. We're doing this. We're just not committing to specifics that are.
I think according to board policy, we need a commitment from the board one way or another.
Really?
I think we would have to approve. I would think we have to approve what's presented, right? I mean, that's what we put out for comment, so we would be approving what we. We're either approving it or we're not, as it's presented, right? And that's part of the motion.
Lisa?
They also made changes. They also made changes along the way for Math 1. So when we did approve that and they brought them back, it still allows for that to happen. So I agree what you're saying. Getting outside eyes on it would then allow feedback to them as well. But we could allow them to move forward along with getting outside eyes. It gives them feedback. So then they could work it in and take a look at the feedback and see what works for the scope and sequence that they. I understand the need for them to know where we're going. I understand the need for them to know that and teachers need to know as well. Building principals need to know what's going to be on their
It would be nice.
schedules.
Yeah, I would just.
Do you have a motion to meet your needs here?
What?
Well, let Mr. Heller just
go ahead, Mr. Heller.
So I guess the question was regarding
Yeah.
professional development. I know that at least for Coeur d'Alene High, I can speak for. I feel like the geometry teachers, who most likely will be the ones moving into teaching Math 2 next year, have expressed that they're comfortable, but they would like a decision to be made so that we can start the work and really get the ball rolling, figure out what the textbook looks like, really start digging into the pacing guide. I agree, outside independent review is good, and that will happen. I don't think that's anybody's questioning whether that will happen, but I think the feeling I'm getting is those folks are ready to make this final so that we can start really committing to doing the work for Math 2 and Math 3. And yeah, more professional development is always needed. Every teacher could use more opportunities to get better at their craft. So, but I think that as a team, we're ready for this move to happen and comfortable with the plan the implementation plan that's been laid out.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. I think the one thing that we do have power over is making sure that you guys have adequate resources, and so we don't get to sit down and talk with teachers. You know, Mr. Hand and I had a nice conversation a couple weeks ago, but we don't get to have, you know, ears not on the ground necessarily to what your teachers are feeling, and I just want to ensure that they're getting enough time, that they're not feeling rushed, and if we need to give them one more sub day. I'm sure the end of the year is a really busy time for them, but I'm also sure that the beginning of the year is as equally busy, and so it's a lot to fit in, and it's a big change, and so if we can support them through additional subs or another day of professional development or whatever they feel would best suit their needs, please keep us in the loop.
And maybe the language that is in the agenda when they, under our informational summary that's in there, Lisa, indicates we respectfully request, this is the second paragraph, the board approve the initial course pacing guides. And so I definitely read that as not final and not something that isn't going to continue to be a work in progress.
You know, I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud and be difficult, but I feel as though our process here is flawed for me. I think we should have had independent eyes on this before the board was asked to approve it. And so tonight, if I don't choose to approve this, it's not because I don't support what anybody in this district is doing. I don't support the process in the approval of this new curriculum.
Miss May, I just say I understand your concerns, but that's not what policy requires, and it's certainly not what we've done for every other course. You know, we've approved course pacing guides, you know, along the way, whether it's been English, science, and I understand and I agree wholeheartedly. This is extremely important because our math performance has been gross, you know, for lack of a better word. You know, it's not satisfactory to anybody in the district, and it needs to be our top priority. And unfortunately, that's not just a Coeur d'Alene issue, that's a state Idaho issue, and it's maybe even a national issue. But, you know, I'm comfortable with the integrated approach. I think the results in Math 1 this year have been positive, and I'm comfortable moving ahead with the initial approval. I want to see it back in August. I want to see honors. That's just me.
It would be our intention to bring back both honors and accelerated pathways and be able to demonstrate a full articulation. This isn't, I want to make sure that we're clear. This is not a high school math issue. This is a K-12 math sequencing issue that we're working through. We're drawing a lot of attention to it at the high school level because of the reorganization of the structure in which we are doing it. And every one of us that have been involved in this would be clear to say that it is not our intention to do what is minimally acceptable. It is to provide the highest quality math instruction and programming for all of our kids. And so we're fine with bringing it back to you as often as we need to for board's input and guidance, but we would respectfully ask for the opportunity to at least have 2 and 3 approved at this point, and then continue this dialogue and conversation along with plans for professional development and opportunities for resource allotment and growth for all of our staff as we do this.
Dr. Kelly, I appreciate that comment, I think, but what sticks with me then is when I read the evaluation that we do have, and it says clearly that the pacing guides for Math 2 and Math 3 met the minimum standards for each course. And so that's what's catching me up, and because we can't see more of what was in this report, it's putting, I feel like putting me in a frustrating and difficult position, but I'm glad to hear that you're not striving for a minimum in anything, so.
I'm not sure I know where we stand. Yeah, there's not a motion in here like we typically see. So is there, I'm just going to create one, but is there a motion to approve the initial course pacing guides for Math 2 and 3? With the, I'm going to ad lib here, but with the expectation that this be brought back before the board in July and August for enhanced approval, or does that make sense? Approval of enhancements? Adjustments. Thank you.
Getting the auditors to include Math 2 and 3 in the,
if we're going to do that, I would prefer.
Okay, I can make that motion.
Okay, so that would be the first motion. Well, that was a proposed motion that I can't make. Is anyone so moved? Okay, Ms. Brumley so moved, Ms. Pickford is seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, Ms. May.
We're going to take last comments on this.
Yeah, so you had just mentioned the curricular audit review of this. Can we, that falls under this, right? We can make a motion on that? Or?
But Chair Marshall, before that, we didn't ask for finishing comments on this, and I would just like to really be clear to Dr. Cook and the entire team out here. My vote tonight is not because I don't believe in the work that you're doing. I fully support it. I'm mostly saying this because I want to hold it up to our community and say, look what we're doing, this is great stuff. And I believe we will get there, and we are so close. And I look forward to getting eyes on this and having them confirm that. So I want you to know that tonight. Yes, and so my motion I would like to make a motion to include Math 2 and Math 3 in, what is the name of our auditor? Curricular audit.
So
I would just ask for an external.
I make a motion to ask for external review of Math 2 and Math 3.
Okay, is there a second on that? Okay, hearing.
I would like further discussion on. I'm just curious as to. I would like to know for deciding that what would be the cost, what would be the time frame for them to do that, and is it going to?
Oh, is your mic?
I'm sorry. So my question is.
I'll get a second before we can discuss.
Oh.
So I'll second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Ms. Brumley, why don't you repeat what you had on?
Yes. So before I would approve something like that, I think I would want to know the cost and the time frame, and also, is it appropriate to have the final course pacing guide as opposed to the initial course pacing guide? And so if we do not have that until late summer, what's our window of time for them to confer and get information back to us? Because we'd be well into teaching Math 2 potentially before the audit could come back in. So those are just some of the thoughts running through my head. I agree that having done a curricular audit and not including it is problematic. So I'm sort of, those are the two sides that I'm trying to weigh here.
Okay. I can agree with what you're saying there, that I think I need more information to support it. I'm not opposed to the idea, but to approve that without knowing who's doing it or what the cost is or what the scope of the review is, I think is maybe additional. So, I mean, I think for me, I'd want more information, so I would not support this motion tonight. But maybe we could take it up for discussion at a future meeting with a little more information. It is how I feel.
Could you make another motion to put that into play?
Or she can amend it, can't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, or amend it
She can withdraw it or amend it.
to take those into consideration, because I agree, yes. I mean, I think you'd rather want eyes on it when you're not in your initial. I mean, that would be good to get the feedback, but if we're going to be having it.
I think the sooner we get eyes on it, the sooner we know to our community, and we're demonstrating that we've had it audited and we've had a third party look at it, which I think is not probably all that uncommon. And I think when we unveil this curriculum audit to the community, they're all going to ask, well, why didn't you include your new Math 2 and Math 3? They will want to know why we didn't include this in our curriculum audit. So it will be asked either tonight or 30 days from now. And I think the sooner that we commit, whether we're not going to commit exactly who's doing it or the cost, but we commit tonight to including it in some way, shape, or form, I think is going to be an important issue. But
So we had a motion and a second. Motion was to request an external view of Math 2 and Math 3. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Nay. Motion fails. Yeah. So Jen, Tambra, and myself were nays, and Tom and Lisa were yays. I'm not opposed. I'd like a little more information. I think that's what I heard Ms. Brumley say. Dr. Cook and I were talking about April 15th, where we may have a workshop, so I'd be okay if we had further discussion on, if we put this on the agenda for April 15th and we discuss it then.
We can do some preliminary work on getting that. I think the intent of your ask aligns with the work that the committee is doing, and I think we can work on some of those things, and we can have some more information for you by the 15th.
The 15th is enough time.
I think at least, I don't know that we can have that completely audited, but we can definitely have preliminary conversations and have that available, the results of those conversations with the auditors.
Yeah, for me, basically, I guess I'd like to know is Curricular Associates, is that what they're called? Or
Curricular Management Solutions Incorporated.
What they envision, what's that take and what's it cost? That's what I'd like to know. I agree with what Ms. May said, that it would make sense to have them do it. So,
did they audit our algebra and geometry courses?
Correct.
That will be somewhat frustrating that we're phasing these courses out and we didn't audit the courses that we're moving to, but that is here.
Algebra, no. Geometry and Algebra 2, yes, because those were in our existing course catalog at the time of the audit.
I mean, part of the audit, and we're getting way off base here, but is they're auditing the fidelity of instruction to the written curriculum, right?
Correct.
Right.
Written,
So
taught, and tested.
You couldn't do that for Math 2 and Math 3 necessarily for that because no one's teaching it. So how can you check that they're teaching to what your curriculum is? I think if that's my understanding of the curriculum.
I'm confident we can get some feedback from them. Not on teaching related to the curriculum, but
on the
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What time on
Chair Moisro, may I ask also, as part of the motions that I've heard, I did not hear anything regarding the textbook buyback, which was an option that is in front of you also. If that is something that you would like to consider tonight, certainly that would allow us to move forward with that process, at least for Math 2. If you are certainly reticent, I understand as well.
Okay, thoughts on that request? I'm sorry, I missed that in there. If it was in there.
I don't think it's in there. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I can make a motion if you want. I don't think it's included.
So the motion would be to continue the
Book buyback.
book buyback to move to the integrated textbook.
I move to continue the textbook buyback to move to integrated Math 2 and 3 when we're ready.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? No. Okay. We are at policy for action now, and this is just one policy. This was a new update, I believe, on a legislative item. So this is coming basically info and action at once because we don't have a choice. It has to be done. And that is on policy 1500 and had to do with when our budget meetings were held, because it still said the annual meeting, and the annual meeting moved to January, but so that had to change. So is there a motion to approve policy 1500 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We are into info items here.
All right, I'd like to invite Director of Operations Jeff Fuller up, and we're going to give you some updated information on both Lakes Middle School and the Prairie site.
All right, good evening once again. I'm just going to update you on a couple of the projects we have going on. At the Prairie Elementary site, all 3 of the houses are up on blocks and on wheels and moved off of the foundations. And I brought you a couple of pictures just because I think it's really a fascinating process to watch these houses get lifted and moved off. And every time we go by, my kids are like, "What? How do they do that?" And it's kind of intriguing, but they're currently sitting on the back of the property. Basically, we're just waiting for load limits to be off so that they can actually get them off of our property and to their new locations wherever they're going. Cannon Hill is on site right now, finishing their clear out. So with the houses moved off, they've taken out 2 of the foundations. I believe they're taking out the 3rd foundation tomorrow. And the big pile that you see in the middle of that upper left picture has been, they bring in a big grinder and grind all that debris. That's all the wood debris that's from the old buildings and the trees and things that came down from the building location. Those have been cleared out, and I understand that happened today, actually. So that pile is gone now. And the picture on that lower right is the Vista Meadows project putting in the road and sewer. So that's moving along, and they seem to be making a lot of progress on that as well. And then, just a couple updates on that. So we're still moving forward with plan design right now. We're still on track for for it to go out for bid in June. And we've had several meetings with Architects West, and we'll continue to have those. And they're working with the engineers, electrical engineers, plumbing engineers, mechanical engineers, working on the engineering details of those plans. So that's kind of where we're at on plan design.
Hey, now that we've made a formal decision on the location of next site, would it be possible to get a committee together and parents involved, kind of working with Architects West? I know in the past in our other bond projects we've done that, and I think it just really gets buy-in from the community and the parents that will be transferring to that new school.
Yeah, I agree. And I also just grabbed Mr. Rutherford on his way out and said, okay, we need to touch base, and I'll fill you in on where we're at. And so we're going to talk in the morning and put together a plan moving forward for that.
Jeff, are the street improvements that are going to be needed to be made on Prairie, are those going to be part of the general contract, or
those are on us? So those are a different kind of contractor than a general contractor. I mean, that's a contractor that really kind of specializes in the street type structural projects. So that's something that we'll probably put out for bid under our bid policies that we would facilitate as kind of a separate construction contract outside of the general contract for the construction of the new building.
Okay. And then have we decided as far as the bid process that we're using on this? I know, traditionally we've done
design bid build has kind of been the traditional for schools, but we've tried the new CMGC model with the middle school project, and Dr. Cook and I have had some conversations about that, and we'll plan to bring some information together for you guys to review on that.
When is Post Falls going out to bid on their school?
I believe Post Falls goes out to bid next week, first part of next week. They're ready, so yeah. And then Lakes Middle School, I'm pleased to let you know that they actually started today. So you can see the Geno sign went up, and they are working on the abatement of the asbestos in that old book warehouse. So we have an environmental contractor that's out there working on the abatement of that right now. So they can demo that, and then as soon as that's gone, Geno will be bringing in their job shacks and getting that ready. So we're moving forward on that. We've got we had a pre-construction meeting last week at Geno, just kind of talk about the overall time frame. They're working on their final details for the full detailed schedule from here to day of opening of the new facility. And so I'll have more to update you guys on that as we get that. And then we'll be having a meeting later this week at Lakes Middle School with Principal Bankston just to talk about flow of traffic and impacts to the school and how we'll facilitate the construction with their process of holding school for the next couple months until school's out, when the contractors will have then basically full control of the site over the summer.
Intention is to be done for start of school?
Substantially complete for the start of school. There's a couple areas that they may want a little bit more time, like in the gym, but that's not going to impact the learning facilities. But the learning facilities will be ready for start of school.
I couldn't remember from the adult nerds, but I know that the sound for the choir or the band room, are we moving forward with that, or are we still going to wait a little bit I know we were going to look for maybe an independent, just private.
Yeah, we have some information on, some different options for that, but I think we want to bring everything together as kind of a
Once you know
package
more.
rather than looking at, each alternate individually, because I think there's 8 of them. It'd probably be better to look at some of the different alternates as a whole, and we'll have information for you as we continue to move along with that. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Voller.
It's time for MAPS updates.
Yes.
We're excited to
This is
present
the
the
favorite
winter
part
session.
of the meeting. Well, I'm excited because we actually have data for you tonight. So I have 2 parts. Well, first I'd like to say good evening, Superintendent Cook, Chair Marcero, and board members. We have 2 parts of this information to prepare. We've prepared for you for Math 1. I'll give you a little bit of background of what we've been doing with the Math 1 teachers, and then Dr. Nelson will come up and share our NWEA MAP growth results, which include Math 1, but also Geometry and Algebra 2. So our Math 1 teachers are continuing to be busy, collaborating around common checkpoint assessments and lessons. In addition, they have requested to also meet and improve upon our common unit plans. When we first did our course pacing guides, we had kind of, just course pacing and when the units would be taught during the school year, but they wanted to flesh those out. So in fleshing them out, they are actually including a big idea, a common unit assessment plan, which includes when they will give formative assessments as well as those common unit assessments. Because each high school building's a little bit different, they are developing a calendar on when those activities will occur. They have their next retreat next week on April 9th. We will be continuing our work on the TRUE framework. This time we'll be focusing specifically on the mathematics. And so now we'll move into Dr. Nelson to let you know our NWEA MAP Growth Winter Assessment window was February 1st through the 28th. On March 13th, Math 1 teachers, along with Geometry and Algebra 2 teachers, participated in the NWEA Math Growth Assessment training. At this training, they learned how to access individual and class reports, relate those scores to specific skills, and be able to see how they can work with groups of students as well as individual students to create goals for improvement. And so I will pass it over to Dr. Nelson, and then after the data, we'll entertain any questions.
Although Chair Morrison, I'd really appreciate a recess right now to fix that line up at the very top. It's really driving me nuts. I don't know why it did that, but it did. I am pleased to be able to present to you our district's benchmark assessments for NWEA MAP. As you know, this was another opportunity for our district to make sure that the work that we are doing is externally validated. We want to make sure that our students are growing, and this gives us a greater opportunity to see month by month how they're going in terms of meeting overall standards as measured by national norms. As a reminder, this is not a criterion referenced assessment that's not looking at specific standards. It's comparing our students to how students performed nationally based off of those standards. I'm pleased to tell you of the 34 items that have been measured on this assessment, our district showed growth in 31 of the 34. I'll explain to you a little bit more about how that looks here shortly. First of all, again, a reminder, we engaged with NWEA MAP, who has been a large organization in the Northwest for several generations, to provide 3 diagnostic windows, a fall, a winter, and a spring window toward the end of the year. As Dr. Cottle had mentioned, this is twofold. It's not only to be able to see how students are progressing, but to also identify any holes that may be present in previous learning or in preparation for future study. Again, we talked a little bit about them being a norm-based assessment, norm-referenced, and overall showing those progress toward meeting goals. We've also provided for each student who took the assessment in the winter window, we provided them a full student progress summary report that was either provided via conferences right before spring break, or those have been handed out on paper copy to the student, which will hopefully make it to their parent or guardian as we have requested. I've broken down the results in your packet into 4 specific areas. And mostly the first thing that we want to take a look at is I'm showing you cohort results. So this is comparing apples to apples. These are the same students who took the same assessment in both the fall and the winter window. We did have some course changes, as you would probably guess, from some students who may be moving from algebra concepts into Math 1. So those students were excluded because they took 2 different assessments. So again, what you're seeing are students who took the same assessment in both the fall and the winter window. The black line that you see is the national norm line. Certainly that would be at minimum our goal. But in this case, this is for the students in Math 1 who are taking that course in the middle school, high school equivalent course. It is worth high school credit. So what this is showing is that our students actually started above the national norm line at the beginning of the school year and have actually extended that well into the winter window as well. The difference between the black line and the yellow bar, certainly you'd like to see expanding over the course of the academic year, and we do see that. For each grade level, you'll see anywhere between 1 to 2.5 RIT points of growth expected. In this particular case, our students were just above that, at about 6 points of growth.
Dr. Nelson, can you explain in my language, national norm, what that
sure,
what that means? That's the average score, or that's
we're comparing our students' results with students who took the same assessment in the same grade level nationally.
So that's the national average? I mean, is that...
Average is a tough word to be able to use, but it is the norm of such, yes.
So if you looked at the this data for the national,
correct,
that's where the bar would be?
Correct.
Irregardless of what they're taking, algebra, geometry.
Right. So in this particular case, these are 8th grade students. So this is how an 8th grader would perform on a national math assessment. And of course, these are students who are being served in our advanced learning program, so you would expect them to remain high over that. What about our students who we'd call our general education students? These are students in Math 1, taking them as freshmen, 369 total students. Again, you can see the growth from bar to bar is exactly what we'd like to see, a nice vertical growth, and overall 1.9 RIT points of growth, which is far pacing the average as well.
Dr. Nelson, I think you're going to provide this data to us later, because it's difficult to ascertain from looking at this just the percent overall of students that are at grade level. Is that something you kind of have a rough idea of? Like, are we... Because looking on this, we see the growth, which is great, right, but the bar doesn't give us any indication of what percent of our students are meeting our benchmark goal that we're looking for.
I did receive your request for that this afternoon. I haven't had a chance to be able to create that data for you. It's not an instant report available to us, but I do have the raw data. We'll be able to provide that for you. Moving on to our non-integrated course pathways, looking at students in geometry. In this particular case, our students had 2.8 points of growth overall, where the national norm would show anywhere from 1.4 points of growth. So again, we are seeing that the bars are growing over the national norms month to month, in this time term to term. And finally, in Algebra 2, again, so we saw some good growth along the way. The Roush units are a little bit lower in this, so the RIT a little bit lower than what we would like to see, but still our students did show good growth from 246 in the fall window to 250, where they were only expected to have about a point and 1.1 RISH points of growth. You'll also notice that the national norm line tends to flatten out a little bit more in the 11th and 12th grade year. We do not have 12th grade norms, but that is typical of a national normed assessment.
Dr. Nelson, I was reading, they have a great website if anybody's ever interested in. It's pretty cool. But they were saying even they don't recommend, once you get above like 250, 252, that you're, like you said, your line's flat. Correct. Because they're really demonstrating that they're at a higher level. Correct. Math. So it's exciting to see that we're...
It is.
Yeah.
And again, this is why we're doing it, is to make sure that our students are meeting those expectations along the way. The only final things that I wanted to remind you is this is what our student reports will look like. Each of those student reports were delivered right before spring break, I believe Monday before spring break. It will show growth from fall to winter to spring, as well as compared to national averages. And it will also provide on the backhand side a detailed report of what those criteria mean. Finally, Dr. Cottle had mentioned this a little bit. This is one of the nice tools that are available to our content teachers. This is a path report that allows our teaching staff to be able to see, okay, we're talking about congruence right now in right triangle trigonometry and geometry. Well, which are the students that are struggling in these concept areas? Over on the gray bars on the right-hand side are actually student names, which I've covered up. So our content teachers can run reports to be able to help differentiate their instruction, identify students with those goals or with those holes, and to be able to provide that instant level of support as needed. And that slide looks better. What can I provide for you?
Okay, questions for Dr. Nelson? All right, I'm seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Nelson and Dr. Cottle.
Pleasure, thank you.
Okay, we're getting there, folks. So policy for information, we had a lot of them this month, as you can see. And I think because we're running late and running long, I just make this request. This stuff is for information. We'll see it again next month for action. So if we're talking grammatical corrections, those sorts of things, I think we send those in, and we'll make those as part of the edits going forward. But if we have broad concerns, I think we discussed those tonight. Some of these may be difficult to have answers to because a lot of them are finance ones, and Ms. Ebner, as we know, is out ill. A lot of them are. These are from ISBA recommendations, and kind of the reasoning behind them was in the packet. But
are these part of the recommendations that we get through that survey? Like they provide us an annual, yeah. So they're straightforward.
Yeah.
Basic.
But we've even found an occasional mistake. Yeah.
I'm curious about the change to 3340. You're talking about it sounds like the creation of a new district discipline review committee, and I don't understand exactly how that's going to function. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It looked like, from my initial review of this, is that there would be potentially a family could potentially have two hearings they'd have to go to, one with this committee and then to the board. I just think that I just would like to hear some explanation.
So I think this, actually for us, this was more about a consistent delivery of due process. So it wasn't necessarily about having two full hearings. It's more about making sure that the district has done their due diligence to get to that point, and also being a mechanism on the way back down from a hearing in which the board is hearing a student expulsion hearing, giving the board an arm to leverage administrative and committee expertise with regards to how the expulsion services might be delivered. A good example I can think of is any time there might be a situation, for example, where we're not completely convinced that manifestation or whether or not a student's special needs were being serviced or met in the process. One of the things that this committee can do is to help ensure that those things are in place before the action ever gets to the board. It's not necessarily our intention to put together a multi-step expulsion process. Ultimately, if we're doing this well, it should reduce some of the number of expulsions the board is hearing.
Well, I don't know. I just read, and the way I read it, it looked to me like you were, because this talks about the hearing, the DDRC hearing, and then it sounds a lot like a board hearing.
This actually comes from a recommendation from legal counsel out of Boise when we did our training in March. Yeah, out of our workshop training in March, this was the recommendation with Amy White as I would argue, somewhat of a procedural arm of the process to ensure that what's getting to you has been vetted thoroughly, and what's coming back from the board with regards to that can be then administered at whichever school is being done. So,
but still, obviously, there's going to be board would have to have a hearing to make any decision about expulsion.
Yeah,
right?
we're not interfering with that one bit. Yes, that doesn't change.
This is a look at to make sure due process has occurred on the way up to the board.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it does not interfere with expulsion hearings. Those will still come to the board as a part of the legal process.
But I'm understanding that this might be a stopgap before it gets to the board for expulsion. It may be determined by the DDRC that it doesn't come to the board, that there are alternate options. Because as you recall in some of our discussions, we're like, well, no, not. Yeah. In some of our discussions, we talk about, well, is there an alternative? Is there some other ways we could do this? Do we have, is expulsion really the only option? And so I think that, as I understand, this committee will vet those options. And when it comes to us, we're either going to ask the same questions again and make sure there's no other options, or expel at that point.
Dr. Cuttle, don't you have experience with this process? Yeah. Well.
I don't know. It just when I read it at first, it seemed like another bureaucratic step that we didn't necessarily need. But if it's going to help the process, I got an open mind about it, I guess.
And just to add a little bit, in my previous district, we use this, and several other districts in Idaho do. And really, what it does, it gives you another layer of due process. But oftentimes, it's helpful because a school sometimes will exhaust all their efforts with a student, and sometimes they need some fresh perspective. And so what it does is it convenes a committee together to really talk about the issue. It's kind of an informal process, even though it says hearing. We get to talk to the parents, see if there's any information that we haven't discovered, and then that team makes some recommendations. And so it's really been helpful.
Recommendations to administration or the board.
Right, to the administration of the board. Because I've had it before as when I was a principal come in, and we think that we've tried some things. You speak to these different experts on the panel, whether it's your special ed director or your alternative school principal, and they provide suggestions. Sometimes the parents give you information where you realize, oh, this may be a child find issue. Maybe we're addressing a behavior issue, and really there may be a mental health issue. So it gives us kind of an opportunity to problem solve, to make sure we're really looking at the needs of the student and the needs of the school before we bring something to the board. And again, there's some things that are automatic to the board within policy. And then sometimes this committee says, yeah, this is a situation where we really need to go to the board and recommend expulsion or something like that.
Gina, I had a question about the membership of the DDRC and how many. Do you just have one for the district, or does each school have their own? Or maybe that was in there and I just didn't quite.
Yeah, it's basically a district committee, and then usually what you will do is, if it's a middle school student, we have a middle school principal from a different school there. A lot of times we include the alternative school principal because they are usually dealing with kids at risk. Sometimes, they have programs that are going on. We'll have ideas and suggestions. Oftentimes, you may include someone from special education. You may include a counselor. So we try to, it's kind of like a think tank to problem solve. And, are there ways that we can meet the needs of the student that we're not meeting? Because obviously they're still, having discipline issues.
Okay. Any other questions on that particular policy? Okay. Other than grammatical stuff and these other ones, is there anything or anything else in here that we want to address tonight? The only one I noticed in here, and a lot of the finance ones, was, and I mentioned this to Ms. Town earlier today, but business managers in there a lot, and that's a position we've changed titles there. And then one I just thought was funny is on 7450. It starts, with the edits, it starts out, all responsible employees shall. And so I just wondered what the irresponsible employees have to do. So I think there's a word choice issue there that we need to take up. But, I think it was probably trying to say people who have that job responsibility. But it doesn't say that. So I think there's some work to be done on that one, but we can handle that over the next month. Okay, so that's policy for information. Any other comments, questions? Okay, so these will be out for 30 days, and we'll see them back next month. Like I said, if you have grammatical stuff, get those to Miss Town, please. Okay.
Can I interject here?
Yep.
We'll do a better job to try to catch those grammatical issues before they get to you guys next time. Thank you.
Okay. So, next up, this is a board information item. I had at least 3 of you, maybe all 4 of you. As you know, there's been lots of discussion over those last several months, or comments, public comments, about school start times. And like I said, I think at least 3 of you came to me and said you'd like to see this on an agenda. And we talked about that a while ago, that it would get onto this agenda. So it's an information item, and it's really fairly broad. It's about school start times. And I think what Dr. Cook's hoping to get out of this is at least some guidance and kind of next steps. Is this an issue that the board wants to take on, or is it not? I think we need to kind of give that direction. I would say if it is, or if it's something we think we might, what I think Dr. Cook would suggest is that we use the resolution process like we did with NEXA. And so next month, kind of a resolution would come back that maybe would address some of the things we talk about and kind of give some guidance to what we're going to do. You know, are we going to form a committee? Are we going to get in a room and do this ourselves? Or, you know, how's it going to happen? So I'll open it up to discussion.
Well, I'd like to see us explore this issue. I think the science is there, but there's also a lot of practical things we have to look at. And I do think that the community needs to be consulted. I think it's a mistake to say we would have this ready for next fall without consulting the community. I think that's wrong. It's just, I understand the urgency to move along this way, but I also think that the community needs to weigh in. There's a lot of changes, as we know. Bus schedules is one of them, but there's people's work schedules and all kinds of other things. So I would like to see us move toward a work group or subcommittee or something along those lines that would come out of the resolution and study this issue. I think it's an important issue to study. In other words, I'm saying I don't want to drop it. I'm not sure it can happen as quickly maybe as RISE wants it to happen, but I think it can. I think we certainly should head that direction.
I agree that we need to move forward, and whether tonight we, I don't know how Dr. Cook you would want as far as direction in a resolution. Do you want direction also in calling up an ad hoc committee, or would you rather have that be included in a resolution for the next board meeting?
I think really what we're looking for right now is what are the things that you would want us to consider with regards to next steps. Like what Tom just said, getting community input would be of value. Considerations for timelines, what are the things, like we're not looking to make a decision right now. We're looking to talk about all the considerations the board would be interested in to see in the resolution that would come back to you guys for approval, which would then task us with the work that we need to go do that I think that this community, at least parts of this community, wants to engage in.
Yeah. I think it's a very important topic, and I think Dr. Morrow has expressed that the research has already been done on this issue, and I don't think any of us up here want to go head-to-head with the most current research on late start times, because I do believe whether it's school start times, sleep in teenagers and adolescents, that study's been done, and I think we can all probably agree that many of our students are sleep deprived, and that's affecting performance, mental health issues. I think it's right. It is how do we go about it, and I think community input is going to be very important, because with community input it becomes community information and education. And if we don't properly educate our community or bring them into this conversation, many of them may not be aware of the current research. They may not even be aware of the science that their student is sleep deprived. And so I would like to see a timeline in the resolution that's fair, that gives the district and the community enough time to dialogue, that we hear from all of our principals that will be affected. So whether it's an ad hoc committee. I think that's probably the easiest way to go. Isn't that usually what you guys have done in the past? And then how are we going to get the community input? Whether is it, back to school nights in the fall, how are we going to reach out to our community and our parents to see how they feel about this?
One of the things that I think is really important is I agree with the idea of community input, but I don't agree with it before there's an opportunity to educate. Because I think if you put that cart before the horse, then you're going to get uneducated responses. And so I would want to see as part of the resolution with what, and maybe this is what you were saying, Lisa, is that, how do we get the word out? How do we educate and then get the input after that piece has been there? That would be what I think is the most well, I don't know what you call it. Effective isn't the right word, but it resonated somewhat with me about this idea that even if there is pushback from the community, how do you deny that this is the right thing to do by kids? And so I don't know that that is necessarily at the top of my priority list as far as making this decision of what we need to do. I would be interested to hear what the reasons are. So it's not just a matter of, do you support moving back start times, but do you support it? And if not, why not? Because I get that there's going to be struggles in families, but with any change, there's going to be struggles within families. And so I do think that this is going to be more about the board taking this head on jointly to say this is going to happen for these reasons. So those are just my initial thoughts and comments on it. And I really think that a huge part of our ad hoc committee is this education piece to the community.
So I'd like to throw one of the things that I think will be, I don't know if I'd say it would be a challenge, but this conversation is going to be a community conversation. We also are going to be in a position where during those similar kinds of timeframes, we're going to be having conversations about potential strategic plans and potentially asking the voters for another type of ballot initiative and potentially putting out there an academic portrait of a graduate kinds of conversations and having all of those. And I think one of the things that I would like for the board to at least have consideration for is this is a very important topic. And as they all are, and they don't happen in vacuums. So when people are making decisions, whatever they might be, these intersect. We've talked about math instruction tonight. Those conversations are all going to be a part of this conversation and influence it one way or the other. I don't know that I'm expecting it to be handled differently, but we're going to be going to the community a lot in the next, I don't even know if I want to put the time frame on it, 6 to 18 months for a lot of different asks. So it's not going to be potentially done in a vacuum, I think is what I'm trying to say.
I think for me on this, I just need a lot more information. I'm certainly not convinced yet, but I haven't been out researching or anything, but that is the right thing to do, because I feel that's cart before the horse. To me, I think we need a committee that evaluates this. I think it is a big topic. I think it's a big issue. To me, it's got to be 30 plus people, which makes me cringe a little bit. But, I think that's what you need on a group like this. I think it's got to be diverse. And to me, I'd want to see kind of equal representation at elementary, middle, and secondary, because there's considerations for all of them. That they study the issue so we're not becoming content experts, and come back with some recommendations that then would get taken to the public. And to me, I appreciate what Dr. Morrow and what Mr. Elliott had to say, but you know, we're elected public officials, and I'm certainly going to listen to my elected public. I mean, that's what we're elected to do. So, you know, I certainly would want community input on this at some point once we got to the point that we had some recommendations or some possible recommendations. And I wholeheartedly agreed that I don't see how this could happen for next school year, because I think it's way too big of a conversation to me. You know, I think it at best would be the following school year. And I think with big decisions like this, same with like border, you know, when we're changing boundaries, I think the more advance notice you can give, the better. So people have time to wrap their brain around something and adjust their own schedules. So, you know, to me, this isn't a slam dunk. You know, I'm not there, but I need a lot more information. And I think we've heard some great information from the folks that have come and spoke, but it's been one side of a big picture. And you know, we haven't talked a lot about side effects, and they're, you know, I don't think it's true. Well, I know it's not true that there's not been a district that's switched and switched back, because I know of one in Denver. But you know, there's things we haven't talked about or we haven't heard about that are obstacles to this, and so I'd like to I need a lot more information, I guess, to get to a decision. Me.
I'm open for the discussion of the school start times as well. I'm not in a rush for it. I don't see it happening the start of the school year. The community we live in loves to be a part, and we welcome them, and we love to have them a part of these discussions as we're making decisions. So I think definitely the education process is going to be important, and inviting them into those discussions. So how we do that, I'm not sure the best way, because we always seem to get the same people to come to those committees. So it would be important to me to make sure we're getting people, you know, elementary, middle school, you know, representation of our community, and also take a look at the districts that have gone that direction, and the one, I guess, that switched back. So I think we have a lot of work to do with this, but I'm definitely open to starting the discussion if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about this is we're not breaking new ground here. There's been thousands of districts that have studied this, and thousands that have changed or not changed. And so I think what I would say we do, because we're not for action tonight, is that you know, that we spend the next month, I guess, and bring back a resolution. You know, talk to those folks. I would assume we're tasking Dr. Cook to kind of work on that, but bring back a resolution that we would discuss and kind of choose to move forward on this or not, as far as kind of that next step.
I think that sounds reasonable. I think what makes me a little bit uncomfortable in our conversation is that we can debate whether this is the right choice for our district based on all of the issues that go into that. Busing and elementary students standing in the dark at bus stops and athletics. But what we cannot debate, in my opinion, is the research. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the CDC, and multiple organizations have definitively said that students are sleep deprived. So I think we got to be really careful in commingling why we would not proceed with a later start time. We can't refute that it's not in the best interest of our students to start later because of sleep deprivation. That I'm not sure that we have the ability to refute, because the experts have done that. And like you said, we're not content experts. But what we should debate, and where I want our resolution to be focused, is it the right decision for our district? And that we would say, we recognize that the leaders in these fields have said that students are sleep deprived. You know, the sequela of bad things that can happen to teenagers
because they lack sleep. We know that exists. However, our district cannot move to make that decision. Like, we have to be really clear on what we're debating. I'm not comfortable debating whether it's good or not for an adolescent to start school later, because I think that research, like we've heard, has been done, and it's 20 years in the making. Now, is it the right decision for our district based on everything that goes into that decision? I agree that we need to have that conversation and we need to get community input. And I think that's what Trustee Brumley was saying, is this a very difficult conversation, because without correct information, are we debating what's in the best interest of our students? So I would just ask that we be really clear on where we're getting our resources and our information, and we're looking to experts in the fields, the Academy of Adolescent Health, like I said, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the AMA, all of the institutions that study adolescents and adolescents' health, and we incorporate that into our conversation, and we don't try to dispute or refute research that's already been done, that we focus on our district and what's in the best interest logistically and for our students of our district. And I think it worries me that we could get some vocal people in support and against, and we're not really debating what's in the best interest of our students. And that's what I want to get to the bottom of.
Well, I do agree that I'm kind of following up on Ms. Brumley's comments. You know, when we ask the questions of the community, we need to have narrowed down our thinking a lot as to what the questions we were going to ask them. So there's a lot of work to do before we survey. I do think I think it would be negligent to not survey the community. But we do need some education beforehand, and we need to have kind of focused our questions into, here's all the reasons. I mean, I'm not disputing the research at all. I'm just disputing the practicality. How's this going to work in the Coeur d'Alene School District, and will it work, or should it work, or I mean, that's. But so I guess that goes back to that committee again. I think we need that committee's got a lot of work to do, and then I think maybe by next fall or something we might be in a position to ask the community some questions. Or maybe it'll be, I don't know. That's it.
I was just going to say, Casey's comments prompted, when he talked about borders, it made me think, well, what are the implications with Post Falls, and what are the implications of Lakeland? And so I was just going to add that part of either the resolution or the committee's directive would be that we should be looking also to our neighbors, and maybe they would follow suit. Maybe they would have reasons not to. Dr. Cook's over there laughing.
They're going to love us for this.
But we start earlier, and Mr. Elliott pointed out, we start earlier than any district around us. Sandpoint starts at what, 8:20. Post Falls starts at 8-ish. Lake City starts 10 minutes later than Coeur d'Alene. So there are many different start times in our area. We are by far, our CHS is by far the earliest, I think, high school in the area.
I agree. That would be good information to have. So, I mean, a review of regional start times. Right.
Did that help you at all?
I think if we can address, the committee, what kind of a makeup of a committee, and what we want them to look at, and in what time frame, that would be a good resolution. And then the real work will be after that, because there's a lot of information. And I would say we need to inform more than educate, and including certainly myself, because I don't know what the experts are saying, other than what the folks who've come in here and said that's what they're saying.
Just
but
Google late start.
right. Okay. Dr. Cook, does that give you enough?
It does.
Okay. All right. Calendar, we, as you know, always have that third Monday as a workshop. Dr. Cook had suggested to me that if we're still holding that workshop, that we discuss early childhood literacy and an update on the opening books. Opening doors, I think.
I think I would like us to broaden this just a little bit from early literacy, which would include opening books, opening doors, but just K-5 literacy as a general starting point. We've got that connects to so many different things. that we'd love to share with you guys. I think it would be a great opportunity to just get a broad picture and talk about some of the directions that we're getting ready to head, and do some things that we'll be doing starting hopefully this summer.
Two other things I'd suggest. I think one of them we already discussed earlier, but is kind of a comeback on the review of the Math 2, Math 3, right? We're going to get some more information and present that at that meeting, and then the board could make a decision on that. And the other thing I'd suggest that we do is just talk policy in general. You know, we've made it through a huge chunk of our policy over the last 4, 5, 6 years. There's a teeny little chunk of 700 and 800, 900 policies that are still kind of hanging out there, and I feel like we got to push that a little bit to get it, because if you go to look at policies, that stuff is completely lost. So I would just like us to spend at least a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes, to kind of talk about those, see what's there that hasn't been addressed, and put a timeline on ourselves to get those addressed.
And Dr. Cook, would it be possible to hear like an update on what you guys are thinking with the additional levy dollars? It's for next year. Is it too early for that? Just so we're kind of aware. I've been fielding some community questions. You know, the community's excited about the mental health initiatives, and even just a rough general.
I think we could do a really. If you promise not to ask deep diving questions, I think we could do some pretty generalized report on that.
It's
stuff.
exciting conversation.
We've got some good stuff going. We've got some jobs posted, new jobs posted that we're excited about. So yeah.
Oh yeah. So do we want to stick with our 5 o'clock traditional time? Are we good with 5?
So think like an hour and a half maybe, or what?
Yeah, I would think an hour and a half. We never are real good on our times, so. Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you all. Meeting. Yeah, we'll do it here. Yep. Okay.
She wants 2 hours. I'm sure if she gets a chance to have audience with you guys, she'll take it.
With this group, you'd never get an hour. Okay, meeting adjourned.